Chapter 258. Translator. Ryuxinji Editor. H2DH2 Mr. A group of Gogrian elites, who were unable to form an effective formation. No matter how many men they had and how powerful they were no different from a mantis trying to stop a chariot. From the moment Wang Chong broke through their formation for the second time, and disrupted their formation, the fate of these Gogrian elites, that had been mobilized from the distant Korean peninsula had been sealed. Retreat! Retreat! Leave this place! Chaos broke out among the Gogurians, and as though frightened beasts, they scattered in all directions. No one thought of hiding in a monastery or temple. That would be like catching a turtle in a net, and it would be even more impossible for them to escape. Boom! By Wang Chong's side, the morale of the Gogurians was invigorated. The hooves of their warhorses galloped, and brilliant halos tore through the darkness as they chased after the Gogurians. If they were to resist, it would still be troublesome. However, if they were bent on escaping, they would only die even faster. Congratulations to user for killing 1110 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1111 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1112 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1113 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1257 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1258 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1259 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Information gushed into his mind like a waterfall. Amidst the mountains, a strong gale blew, and formless ripples shook the surroundings. After reaching a radius of 10,000 meters, Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo began to expand once more. The exhilaration brought about by the growth of his strength left Wang Chong feeling unprecedentedly excited. With another 700 more, I'll be able to reach level 2, Wang Chong thought. The bane of the battlefield, aura became more and more difficult to upgrade as one progressed. At the very beginning, Wang Chong only needed to kill a regular non-humankind soldier. However, to advance from level 0 to level 1, he would have to kill 100 Gogrian Uzun, Abbasid Caliphate, and Mengshi Zhao soldiers. Furthermore, these soldiers were at least at origin energy tier 9 to true martial realm, and none of them were easy to deal with. And at level 2, the number of mutated race warriors needed to be killed was even more 2,000. Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield, Halo was still at level 1, and could only be effective against martial artists at true martial tier 1 and below. Its effects were practically overwhelming and destructive. However, it was much less effective against martial soldiers at tier 2 of the true martial realm and above. If he wanted to deprive a tier 2 true martial expert of his martial arts halo, and use it on an even stronger opponent, Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo had to reach at least level 2. Roar! Just as Wang Chong was deep in thought, a deafening roar suddenly echoed from the monastery at the foot of the mountain. A powerful shockwave swept up the surroundings, and leaves were even blown into the air before Wang Chong and the others. It's from the monastery. They are currently fighting with the Gogrian leaders. Mayasame Ayaka's low voice sounded by Wang Chong's ear. The violent wind caused her black clothes to flutter violently. Looking down from atop his steed, Wang Chong saw that the walls of the monastery had already been pushed down, and within the monastery, Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin, Ma Yinlong, the eagle, one-eyed steel arms, and the cold-faced imperial army general appointed by the royal court, whom Wang Chong wasn't familiar with, were working together to attack the 3 Gogrian leaders. Both sides were engaged in an intense battle. Boom! 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 Mighty torrents of energy blotted out the sky and covered the earth, toppling mountains and overturning seas. Everywhere they passed, the high walls, temples, houses, artificial mountains, and even the tall stone tablets in the temples were smashed into pieces like tofu. Different types of stellar energy collided with each other, triggering a storm that soared into the sky. The storm reached a height of several hundred feet, and nearly enveloped half of the monastery. In the face of this chaotic, destructive stellar energy storm, almost all of the Imperial Army soldiers were forced out of the monastery. Who? Flames several dozen zhang-hai soared into the sky, dyeing the air crimson. At the same time, blazing sword chi and saber chi threatened to tear the sky apart. In the midst of the storm, one could vaguely see some frightening and bizarre images. Even Mayasame Ayaka couldn't help but blink her eyes in fear at the sight of that overwhelming aura, and she subconsciously took several steps back in fear. Profound martial realm. Mayasame Ayaka was certain that most of these people were profound martial realm experts, and even if some of them weren't, they were close to it. After all, only profound martial realm experts could produce such an aura. How powerful, Mayasame Ayaka thought. It was impossible for a true martial realm cultivator to stand against a profound martial realm expert. If not for the encirclement of the army and the profound martial realm experts in the Imperial Army, she wouldn't have dared to participate in such a battle. Don't worry, they won't be able to reach here, Wang Chong said with a smile. Mayasame Ayaka was skilled, but she had never been on the battlefield before, so she wasn't too familiar with such matters. Soldier against soldier, general against general. On this battlefield, anyone could escape, but the three Gogrian leaders couldn't. Needless to say, it was impossible for them to come here and kill them. This was the reason why the Imperial Army general appointed by the royal court had been watching the battle from the side. The fact that the three Gogrian leaders didn't escape meant that they understood this point. No matter what, the Tang dynasty wouldn't allow them to escape. Unless they had absolute confidence, it was futile for them to escape. Boom, boom, boom. Aura chi, which far surpassed that of any true martial realm expert, flowed wantonly, colliding in all directions. The entire mountain range was trembling from the fight between the top experts. In just a short period of time, 2/3 of the Buddhist temple, that had taken more than 4 months to build, had been destroyed. Broken bricks and wooden shards were swept up by the stellar energy, filling the air with a fearsome aura. Ever since his reincarnation, this was the first time Wang Chong was seeing a battle between profound martial realm experts. A battle of this level had far surpassed Wang Chong's current cultivation realm. Putting aside Wang Chong, even Mayasame Ayaka and the others who were stronger than him wouldn't be able to interfere. However, it was still possible for them to interfere a little. Call Luo Chong over, Wang Chong suddenly said with a smile. Luo Chong was the name of the master archer whom the king of Song had sent to Wang Chong's side. It took Wang Chong quite a bit of effort before he managed to get the name. That person was simply too taciturn. Gongzi. Soon, a fully armored Luo Chong appeared behind Wang Chong with a custom-made bow on his back. Standing there with a height of more than 2 meters, he gave people a great sense of oppression. Luo Chong was a subordinate of the king of Song, and the fact that he was able to reach such a level and become an esteemed figure in the Tang dynasty meant that his archery skills were formidable. In this battle, he had killed several times more true martial realm experts than the other master archers of the Imperial Army. This was the difference in their strength. To Wang Chong, there was no doubt that Luo Chong was the strongest person in the entire battlefield, and he trusted him the most. Luo Chong, are you able to see the situation in the monastery? Wang Chong stretched out a finger and pointed to the bottom of the hill as he asked. Those words immediately caught the attention of everyone around Wang Chong, and the 100 Imperial Army elites beside Wang Chong immediately turned their gazes over. It's useless. They are too fast, and the disturbance from the stellar energy storm is too great. If I were to make a move like this, I might accidentally injure them. Luo Chong's entire body was wrapped in thick armor, and his voice buzzed. He didn't even need Wang Chong to say it. He already knew Wang Chong's intentions. Wang Chong's idea was good, but it wasn't practical at all. As the saying goes, in a battle between experts, every second counts. Their speed was simply too fast. Given his strength, he could easily kill those true martial realm experts with a single arrow, pinning them to the ground without giving them a chance to dodge at all. However, those who had reached profound martial realm, like the 3 Gogrian leaders, had a high chance of fending off his arrows. Their reactions were simply too fast. On top of that, they were simply too close to one another. If his arrows missed the 3 Gogurians, they would hit their own comrades instead. Furthermore, There were simply too many disturbances in the monastery. Leaves, bricks, mud, wood shavings, blazing flames, saber chi. Even though these disturbances didn't affect them as much as the others, they still interfered with their movements. In this kind of close combat, if there was even the slightest mistake, not only would they not be able to kill the enemy, but their own side would also be killed. If that were to happen, he would be overconfident. It wasn't that he hadn't seen the battle in the monastery, but there was a reason why he hadn't made a move yet. Wang Chong was thinking too simply. Hee, do you see the toad head at the back of the monastery? Wang Chong chuckled as he pointed to the bottom of the hill. Toad head. Luo Chong was taken aback. Perplexed, the others also turned their gazes over. 2/3 of the monastery at the bottom of the hill had been destroyed, and only 1/3 of it remained. And in that third of it, at the location closest to the battlefield, there was indeed a toad head lying on the roof. In the construction of houses, this kind of eave shape was actually very common. Just that, they couldn't understand what this had to do with helping their comrades deal with the Goguryans. Later on, when the flames reach a height of 11 zhang, stand here and listen to my command. Lower your wrist by 3 fun for Li and 2 jiao, and aim there. With his hands behind his back, Wang Chong pointed confidently to the side. Wang. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Luo Chong's heart jolted. Staring at Wang Chong, astonishment flashed across his eyes for the first time. 3 fun for Li, and 2 jiao. This was something that could only be used in archery. When the top archery experts of the Imperial Army imparted their students, they would often point out how high and how low their wrist should be. Due to the high requirement of archery, this number had to be accurate without the slightest error. At the same time, due to the difference in everyone's height, arm length, archery holding habits, and center of gravity, when pointing out and correcting a person, the number would vary depending on their situation. In order to achieve this, one had to have an extremely high level of attainment in archery. But Wang Chong didn't even have calluses on his fingers. In the period of time he had been following Wang Chong, he had never seen Wang Chong touch a bow before. He couldn't understand when Wang Chong managed to attain such a high level of attainment in archery. Chapter 259. Xiao. Drawing a specially made arrow from the quiver by his waist, Luo Chong held it between the index and middle fingers of his right hand, as he walked over to the position Wang Chong pointed out. After which, he knocked the arrow, and turned to look at Wang Chong. Wang Chong was amused. How could he possibly not know what Luo Chong was thinking? It was true that he wasn't skilled in archery, and he wasn't a master archer either. However, the reason why he guided Luo Chong wasn't through archery, but through his own eye of discernment, experience and judgment. Mastery of a single technique, mastery of all techniques. Upon reaching the peak of martial arts, determining Luo Chong's height, arm length, center of gravity, and degree of correction was a walk in the park. This didn't require any exceptional mastery in archery, and it wouldn't be affected by reincarnation either. As an existence who had once reached Saint Martial Realm pinnacle, it wasn't too difficult for Wang Chong to achieve this feat, even though his physical body was that of an ordinary origin energy tier 9 martial artist. Wang Chong's soul was at Saint Martial Realm pinnacle. Of the entire battlefield, he was the only one qualified to interfere in the battle in the monastery. Await my orders. Wang Chong shot Luo Chong a glance, before turning around, to look at the monastery at the foot of the mountain. He remained motionless, and it was as if he had turned into a clay sculpture. However, in his mind, Wang Chong's mind was working furiously. It has been a long time since I've done this, Wang Chong thought. Ever since his reincarnation, this was the first time that Wang Chong was using the strength of his previous life to interfere in a battle of this level with his origin energy tier 9 body. The mountain wind howled, brushing past the treetops, shrubs and grasses. Wang Chong and the 100 Imperial Army elites stood motionlessly on the slope. The entire world was silent, and the only sound that could be heard was the intense battle in the monastery. After an unknown period of time, release. As soon as Wang Chong's voice fell rumble, a thick iron arrow shot through the air. In that instant, it seemed as if the sky itself was being torn apart. The fierce astral wind slapped against Wang Chong's face like a whip. This was the first time Wang Chong and the rest had seen Luo Chong shoot an arrow. In that instant, the world seemed to lose its color. Buzz! In the distance, as if by magic, a huge scarlet firestorm soared up from the ground amidst the heart-wrenching cries. Behind this scarlet firestorm, a figure miraculously appeared in midair, as if it had come up on its own, blocking Luo Chong and the toad head on the eaves. Rumble! The arrow pierced right through the chest of the Gogrian expert, and the immense force of the arrow sent him flying through the storm. Buzz! In an instant, everyone who saw this scene on the hillside was dumbfounded. Young master! Mayasame Ayaka turned around and stared at Wang Chong in astonishment, as though she didn't recognize him at all. This was a battle between profound martial realm experts, and even she wasn't able to interfere in it. There were simply too many interfering elements in the area. Yet, Wang Chong was actually able to predict when the Gogrian leader would leap up, where he would appear, and even instruct Luo Chong to shoot him. This was truly inconceivable. Despite having followed Wang Chong for so long, Mayasame Ayaka had never known that he possessed such capabilities. Isn't this way too incredible? Like father, like son. Has the heritage of the Wang clan really reached such a level? On the hillside, the 100 Imperial Army elites were initially dissatisfied with the royal court's decision to assign them to Wang Chong. Even after Wang Chong led them in 2 crucial charges to disperse the organized resistance of the Gogurians, their dissatisfaction didn't vanish completely. But upon seeing this sight, everyone was rendered speechless. Wasn't this young man from the Wang clan a little too incredible? But the one who was the most shocked was still Luo Chong. He was the only one who knew what had just happened. In a battle between experts, every second counts. From the moment he knocked the arrow to the moment he released the bowstring, the Gogrian leader hadn't left the ground at all. But in the next moment, as if Wang Chong had predicted it, the Gogrian leader leaped into the air and collided with his own arrow. Throughout the entire process, other than pulling the bowstring, he didn't do anything else. All Wang Chong did was borrow his strength. It's no wonder why His Highness the King of Song thinks so highly of him. This child is too incredible. It's impossible to fathom him with common sense. In that instant, countless thoughts flashed across Luo Chong's mind. He was an archer, and only archers could win his respect. From the moment he had followed Wang Chong, it was only at this moment that Wang Chong had won his acknowledgement. Luo Chong finally understood why the King of Song thought so highly of him. This young man's talent was truly unparalleled. Lord! A series of shouts in Gogrian suddenly sounded from the monastery. Putting aside Wang Chong and the others, even the Gogrian leaders were taken aback. Following which, a deafening roar erupted from them. The 2 Gogrian leaders exerted their monstrous strength, and despite being outnumbered, they actually managed to force Li Lin, Ma Yinlong, and the others back. Then they charged toward the Gogrian leader who had been sent flying. It seems like you managed to shoot a formidable fellow. Wang Chong was slightly taken aback, but he soon chuckled. That's even better. Luo Chong's arrow didn't kill the Gogrian leader, but the outcome was decisive. The 3 Gogrian experts were already outnumbered, and it was difficult for them to hold their ground. If one of them were to be severely injured, they would be even less of a match. More importantly, Wang Chong had made use of Luo Chong's arrow to break their coordination. This was the reason why they were able to hold on for so long. The Gogrian experts were simply too familiar with one another, and their teamwork was simply too seamless. In comparison, even though Wang Chong had many experts on his side, they were fighting individually, and their teamwork was lacking. Boom! With a deafening explosion and several screams of agony, the battle in the monastery finally came to an end. The 3 powerful and vicious Gogrian leaders fell heavily to the ground. Around him the ground was a mess. Congratulations to user for killing grade 5 Gogrian General Day Hyansik. For altering the fulcrum of destiny, you have gained 3 destiny energy. Congratulations to user for killing grade 5 Gogrian General Day Ensu. For altering the fulcrum of destiny, you have gained 1 destiny energy. Congratulations to user for killing grade 5 Gogrian General Day Jianhuang. For altering the fulcrum of destiny, you have gained 1 destiny energy. Following the collapse of the three voices sounded in Wang Chong's head. De Hyansik de Jianhuang. Wang Chong was surprised. In Goguryeo, most of the generals who could use the word de before their name were of some standing, regardless of what they were called before. Upon reaching this level, they would all change their name to de. For example, De Hyansik, De Insu, and Jianhuang represented their standing in Goguryeo. De Hyansik, this name sounds familiar. Wang Chong frowned in contemplation. Soon, Wang Chong recalled where he had heard the name before. De Hyansik. Wasn't that the Goguryeo general whose real name was Li Jiuhuan, who led the Goguryeo soldiers to raid and harass the northeast region of the Tang dynasty after the civil strife in the Central Plains? During the civil strife in the Central Plains, he was the most hated Goguryeo general in the Anong Protectorate manor. To think that he would die here. To think that he would be together with King Sojurem at the very start. If not for this operation, he might have returned to Goguryeo together with King Sojurem after the assassination, thus becoming a threat to the northeast region of the Tang dynasty. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. In his previous life, there weren't many people who knew that De Hyansik, or rather Li Jiuhuan, had infiltrated the Tang dynasty. Recalling how he had infiltrated the Tang dynasty with King Sojurem, it was no wonder why he led an army to raid the northeast region of the Tang dynasty so easily after returning to Goguryeo. But it was a pity that he wouldn't have such a chance in this lifetime. But soon, Wang Chong couldn't be bothered with De Hyansik anymore. Ha ha ha, I actually obtained 5 points of destiny energy. What an unexpected fortune. Wang Chong laughed heartily as he looked at the additional points of destiny energy in his head. This was truly an unexpected harvest. Thinking back, he had only led his troops to charge here twice, and had Luo Chong shoot an arrow, but he had already obtained 5 destiny energy for nothing. Wang Chong knew how difficult it was to obtain destiny energy, and he had experienced it firsthand. Up until now, these 5 points of destiny energy had been the easiest for him to obtain. All he had to do was lie down, and he would reap the rewards. One must know that the 3 Goguryeo generals were profound martial realm experts. Given Wang Chong's strength, he could forget about killing a single one of them. If he were to encounter them, he would have to think about how to escape. This time, it was all thanks to the Imperial Army General appointed by the royal court and Uncle Li Lin. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to obtain such destiny energy. This wasn't just a matter of strength. Rather, enemy generals like them wouldn't appear alone. They would usually have a large number of elites by their side. It wasn't that easy to kill them. It's a pity that such a good thing only happens once. There won't be another chance in the future. Wang Chong couldn't help but feel a tinge of regret. After this incident, the Goguryans had suffered a heavy blow, and they no longer had the ability to carry out any assassinations in the capital. Even the people from the western regions would probably be intimidated by this incident, and they wouldn't dare to carry out any more schemes in secret. In other words, this was the first time in the capital that he had obtained destiny energy for nothing, and it would probably be the last. However, it wasn't as if Wang Chong had come out empty-handed. It turns out that if I can kill an enemy general and change his fate, I can also obtain destiny energy. Wang Chong fell into deep thought. This could be said to be his greatest harvest in this operation. At the very least, Wang Chong hadn't obtained this information from the Stone of Destiny. This was something he had learned through practice. Although a general was only rewarded with 1 point, such as De Hyansik, who later became a threat to the Tang dynasty's borders and had some status, only received 3 points. Many a little makes an ocean. Chapter 260. Right. Wang Chong suddenly recalled something. If killing 3 Goguryeo generals had given him 5 destiny energy points, wouldn't that mean that he would be rewarded with even more destiny energy? If so, wouldn't he be rewarded with even more destiny energy if he foiled King Sojurem's plan and prevented the second assassination attempt against the officials of the Tang dynasty? At this point, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel excited. The strengthening of the bane of the battlefield halo was indeed rare and precious, but comparatively speaking, destiny energy was the foundation. This was the most important thing. I wonder how many destiny energy points I'll get from killing King Sojurum this time? With the reward of killing 3 generals, and the final reward, this trip down the mountain is truly worth it. Wang Chong was overjoyed. Regardless of what the final reward was, Wang Chong was certain that it wouldn't be less than 10 destiny energy points. When Wang Chong left the mountain to deal with the Gogurians, he was only focused on enhancing his little yin-yang art and the bane of the battlefield halo, as well as stopping the assassinations of the Gogurians. He didn't think that there would be a reward of destiny energy. This was an unexpected reward. Roar! Just as Zhang Xian was deep in thought, a sorrowful howl suddenly sounded from the monastery. No, that fellow isn't King Sojurum. The wind howled, shaking the heavens and the earth. That voice was filled with indignation, and had nowhere to vent it, and it instantly attracted everyone's attention. It's Ma Yinlong. Astonished, Mayasame Ayaka immediately turned her head over. She had been in contact with Ma Yinlong for quite some time now, so she knew a little about him. In this operation, Ma Yinlong didn't care about anything other than the Gogurian King Sojurum. Is King Sojurum not one of them? Mayasame Ayaka was astonished. None of the profound martial realm experts were ordinary individuals. Given how the 3 of them were able to last so long despite being surrounded by so many people, how could they not be King Sojurum? If the 3 of them weren't King Sojurum, where was he? Wasn't he present for such a huge operation? Wait here, I'll go down for a while. A light flashed in Wang Chong's eyes. He placed his right hand on the saddle beside him and flipped himself onto the horse's back. Hiya! He clamped his legs together and immediately kicked up a cloud of dust as he galloped down the mountain. None of the profound martial realm experts were King Sojurum. Others might not know this, but Wang Chong couldn't be any clearer. Dee-da-da. The war horse was as tall as a man, shiny, and as black as a dragon. With a leap, it flew over the broken walls of the temple and landed inside the courtyard. The imperial army of the Tang dynasty was indeed well trained. A portion of them chased after the fleeing Goguryeo elites, while the rest entered the courtyard to deal with the corpses. This was the sight that Wang Chong saw when he walked in. Young Master Wang, are these your subordinates? Amidst the rubble, the indifferent and powerful imperial army general raised his head. This was the first time he had spoken to Wang Chong since the operation began. Wang Chong nodded. Not bad, they are true warriors. A hint of respect flashed across the imperial army general's eyes. After saying those words, he led his horse away from the temple. Sitting on the back of the horse, Wang Chong was slightly surprised. But soon, Wang Chong couldn't be bothered with such things anymore. With a flip of his body, Wang Chong dismounted from the back of the horse and headed toward the area where the battle had been the most intense. At the very center of the temple, the ground was distorted like a fried dough twist. Deep holes could be seen all over the ground, and rubble could be seen everywhere. At the center of this devastated land, Ma Yinlong was kneeling on the ground, and it seemed as if he had collapsed completely. The determination and sharpness that Wang Chong had sensed from him seemed to have vanished in an instant. Around him, the eagle's steel arms and vicious wolf also lowered their heads in a daze. The battle had ended, and the 3 most formidable Gogurian leaders had died in their hands. But King Sojurum wasn't among them. After persevering for 15 years, they felt as if their conviction had crumbled. That was more than a decade. Many of their brothers had died, and they had suffered great humiliation. Yet in the end, King Sojurum still managed to escape. It wasn't hard to imagine the disappointment the 4 of them felt. How many 15 years did one have in their lives? In the battle against King Sojurum, the brothers had ultimately lost. Chong'er, upon seeing Wang Chong, Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin, sighed with a hint of pity in his eyes. Even though he hadn't interacted much with them, he still knew of King Sojurum's name. After all, given his age, he knew of the matter back then. King Sojurum's name, as well as the reactions of the others. Li Lin could more or less guess what had happened. However, there was nothing he could do in this regard. Let me do it, Wang Chong said calmly. Patting Wang Chong's shoulders, Li Lin turned around and left, leaving Wang Chong, Ma Yinlong and the others behind. Hey, you're giving up so quickly? Wang Chong walked over with a smile. None of the four spoke a word, as though they were statues. It was as if they hadn't heard Wang Chong's words at all. At this moment, no one was in the mood to strike up a conversation with Wang Chong. Haha, you can't be thinking that King Sojurem has really escaped, right? Wang Chong laughed heartily. There wasn't the slightest hint of sorrow in his voice. Wang. The hearts of the four jolted, and they raised their heads to look at Wang Chong. Wang Gongzi, you mean to say that King Sojurem hasn't escaped yet? He used the three of them to attract our attention. Did he sneak into the midst of the Gogrian soldiers and escape? The one who spoke with steel arms. He wasn't a fool, and he could vaguely guess what was going on from Wang Chong's words. In that instant, a spark of hope lit up in the eyes of the four. I didn't say that. The entire mountain range is filled with Imperial Army soldiers. Do you think that King Sojurem is that foolish? Wang Chong shook his head, refuting Steel Arm's conjecture. For a meticulous and astute Goguryeo spy king, to be able to come up with a plan like the monastery, spend 4 months to perfect it, spend a huge amount of effort to dig a secret tunnel that connects the capital to the inner and outer walls, and at the same time, be vicious enough to make a move on the officials of Great Tang. How could such a character be so shallow? He was truly underestimating the renowned Gogrian spy king of the Central Plains too easily. Wang Gongzi, what do you mean by that? The four turned to look at Wang Chong, and the spark of hope that had just lit up in their eyes dimmed once more. Don't worry, he won't be able to escape. Wang Chong smiled mysteriously, but he didn't explain anything. There was no need to worry about King Sojurem. The urgent matter at hand was to end the battle here first. Speaking of which, it should be about time for the other side to make a move, right? Wang Chong lifted his head and gazed into the depths of the mountain range. A deafening battle cry could be vaguely heard from that direction. The ambush that Wang Chong had planted through the Bureau of Military Personnel had finally come into effect. It was an inescapable net that surrounded the Goguryans. No matter where they fled to, they wouldn't be able to escape. The 1,000 Gogrian elites were destined to be buried here for the rest of their lives. To think that it would still end in failure. Back in time, when the Buddhist temple was burning with a raging fire far away, under a pine tree on a mountain, an old woodsman with a face full of wrinkles and black hands was carrying a bundle of firewood on his back. He wore a bamboo hat and had a complicated look in his eyes. His current position was neither too far nor too close to the monastery, allowing him to accurately observe the monastery without being surrounded by the imperial guards of the imperial court. There were many woodsmen in the capital who would enter the mountains at night and sell their firewood in the day. It wasn't a rare sight. A gentleman's vengeance is a dish best served cold. These are the words of the people of the Central Plains. Just wait and see. You won't be happy for long. Gazing into the distance, the old woodsman didn't attempt to warn or change anything. Instead, he decisively turned around, pressed down on his bamboo hat, and walked down the mountain with a bundle of firewood on his back. He walked very slowly and calmly, like an ordinary woodsman who couldn't be any more ordinary. He even chopped 2 handfuls of firewood along the way, then made a detour and calmly went down the mountain. He rested for a moment, drank some water, and continued on his way. It was still early, so the old woodsman didn't use the secret tunnel beneath the capital. The monastery outside the city had been discovered, and it had been wrapped up like a dumpling. At this moment, nothing was safe. If he were to use the secret tunnel recklessly, he might just expose his identity, and that would be too dangerous. Carrying the bundle of firewood on his back, the old woodsman walked to the city gate and sat down by the wall. Beside him, other woodsmen had already appeared, and they were seated on the ground just like him. Upon seeing the familiar face of the old woodsman, a few of the woodsmen even greeted him warmly. Some of them even passed their tobacco pipes to him, inviting him to take a puff or two. They had met him several times at the city gate and in the mountains, and they had a good impression of him. The old woodsman chuckled and rejected the woodsman, who invited him to smoke in fluent Central Plains language. It was still early, and the city gates of the Tang dynasty would only open at dawn. The old woodsman wasn't in a hurry either. He blended into the crowd and waited patiently. The more people there were, the safer it would be for him. In order to relax, the old woodsman even closed his eyes and took a short nap. Hung long. After an unknown period of time, the city gates finally opened. The old woodsman shook his body and stood up. Then, he blended into the crowd and passed through the city gates. It was still early, and there weren't many people on the streets yet. The old woodsman finally dropped his disguise and hastened his footsteps, displaying a vigor that belied his age. After passing through many alleys, the old woodsman arrived at a remote woodshed in the south of the city. This was one of his secret strongholds in the capital, as well as his safe house. This was something that even the people around him were unaware of. The old woodsman glanced at the surroundings, and after confirming that no one was following him, he entered the woodshed. The woodshed was empty. Even though there wasn't anything inside, it was extremely clean. The old woodsman swiftly placed down the bundle of firewood and took off his bamboo hat. Then he skillfully opened a dusty box at the corner of the woodshed. He changed out of his dirty woodsman clothes and changed into a set of clean silk robes. In the blink of an eye, the old woodsman had turned into an extraordinary silk merchant. I'm finally back. Chapter 261. Even though the imperial army of the Tang dynasty had discovered his arrangements in the monastery outside the city, he was still a step ahead of them. Sacrifices were bound to be made in order to achieve great things. As for the 1,000 or so Goguryeo warriors and his 3 loyal subordinates, the old woodcutter didn't think much of it. Dying here was better than dying on the battlefield. If the Tang dynasty were to invade Goguryeo, the casualties wouldn't just be this few. He had to eliminate the warmongering faction with the least amount of losses, and at the same time, assassinate the officials of the Tang dynasty to weaken their strength. This bit of sacrifice was truly insignificant. At most, he would only feel that it was a pity that the plan had failed. As the saying goes, where there's life there's hope. No matter how many people died, as long as he was still around, the Tang dynasty would pay the price. After a moment of silence, the old woodcutter took out a notebook from the bottom of his clothes and sat on the bed. A contemplative look appeared in his eyes. This was a habit of his. No matter what operation he was in, he would always consider the gains and losses involved, and he would summarize his experiences and lessons. This was the reason why he was able to raise the influence of the Goguryons to such an extent and launch so many assassinations against the Tang dynasty, stirring up a storm in the Tang dynasty, and yet, no one was able to do anything to him. This failure is too bizarre. Where did I go wrong? The old woodcutter sat on the bed with a grim expression. His plans had never failed since more than a decade ago. This was the first time he had failed so miserably, and it was in such an important operation. This plan had mobilized more than 1,000 elite warriors from the empire, and it had taken 4 months. He had considered all aspects. Throughout the entire process, there wasn't the slightest mistake, and there wasn't any abnormality either. Just where did the problem lie? The old woodcutter's mind was in turmoil. If he couldn't make sense of this problem, he wouldn't be able to carry on with the next operation. This wasn't the only thing that he couldn't understand. He had spent a great deal of effort to build up those 10 or so gathering points. For a whole 15 years, there were no problems. On the surface, he used those of the same clan who opened restaurants and gambling houses to attract the attention of the Tang dynasty. These people would never commit crimes for the rest of their lives, nor would they be caught. On the other hand, the ones who were actually taking action were all guests or Han Chinese, hiding among the crowd and shuttling back and forth. This strategy had never been seen through before, but all of a sudden it was seen through. The old woodcutter could not understand it no matter how hard he tried. It was as if there was an enemy in the dark who had seen through all his tricks. The feeling of being exposed and unable to hide made him feel uncomfortable all over. The old woodsman sat there motionlessly as he went through everything that had happened in his mind. Which Wang clan's brat? The old woodcutter's eyes narrowed, and his expression suddenly became incomparably cold. On the Tang people's side, no matter how he thought about it, the most suspicious person was that boy named Wang Chong. Although he still couldn't believe that someone could defeat him in terms of stratagem, but when he thought about that boy's reputation in the Tang dynasty, This kind of situation was completely possible. I really underestimated him. I should have taken care of him first before taking action. The old woodcutter's hands were clenched so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. His eyes were filled with thick killing intent. But it's not too late. After arranging the last base, I will summon warriors from the Empire and completely eliminate the Wang clan. The old woodcutter clenched his fists and abruptly stood up from the bed. Although the operation had failed, he had not suffered a crushing defeat. That final base was his only hope. The people in the base were all familiar with him and had a deep understanding of the Tang dynasty. As long as these sparks still existed, he could summon experts from the Empire in a short period of time and rebuild more than 10 bases. This was also the main reason why he returned to the city this time. After arranging the subordinates in these bases, he would leave this place and lie low until the wind blows over. When the wind blows over, he would come back to rebuild the things he had lost, and even build an even bigger base. Time to go. The old woodcutter took off the bamboo hat on his head and placed it on the bed. Now, even those woodcutters who had greeted him before could not recognize him. As for those Tang people, it was impossible. Striding out, the old woodcutter, a middle-aged silk merchant, strode out of the room. Once he left this room, no one would be able to recognize him. Buzz! Just as he walked to the door of the room, he seemed to have sensed something. The expression on the old woodcutter's calm and composed face suddenly changed drastically. How is this possible? The old woodcutter's eyes widened in shock, and his face paled significantly. Bang! With no time to think, the old woodcutter closed the door and hurriedly returned to his room. Hurry up, this is the place. Surround this entire place. A loud voice came from outside, followed by a series of galloping horses. The old woodcutter's heart immediately sank. With no time to think, the old woodcutter took off his silk robe, folded it as fast as he could, and put it back under the box. Then, he covered it with the old clothes and changed into the old woodcutter's attire. Then, he took the bamboo hat from the bed. After thinking for a moment in the room, the old woodcutter finally pushed the door open and walked out. The bundle of firewood was placed at the door. The old woodcutter lowered his head and put the bundle back on his back. Then, he calmly walked to the firewood mound. Although everything happened so suddenly, and the Tang Dynasty Imperial Army that appeared in the temple outside the city actually came here, the old woodcutter had absolute confidence in his disguise. Regardless of which aspect, the old woodcutter believed that he had not left any flaws. These people would never see through him. Stop! But just as he reached the firewood mound, a stern shout came from above. Young master, this old man is just a woodcutter. I still have to deliver firewood to others later. Gongzi, why must you make things difficult for me? The old woodcutter lowered his head and sighed. His voice was filled with deep exhaustion. He looked like an ordinary woodcutter who had been busy for an entire day just for the sake of his livelihood. Wang Gongzi, are you certain that this is the place? Hearing the old woodcutter's words, Ma Yinlong turned around and looked at the young man beside him. The group that had appeared outside the firewood mound was none other than Wang Chong, Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the Eagle One-Eyed, Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin, and dozens of Imperial Army members. As soon as the battle at the monastery came to an end, Wang Chong immediately led his group here. He said that he was here to capture some King Sojurim. Everyone thought that it would be another intense battle. But who could have thought that Wang Chong would actually come to this inconspicuous firewood hut? That's right. Chonga, are you certain that this is the place? Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin asked doubtfully. This was an ordinary firewood hut, short and shabby. There were many similar huts in the capital. Li Lin also suspected that Wang Chong might have made a mistake. Old man, let me ask you. Did you see anyone suspicious around here? For example, someone with 3 sabers? Li Lin said with a frown as he rode on his horse. Old masters, you must be joking. I'm just a woodcutter, how could I know so much? The old woodcutter shook his head with a bitter smile. Wang Gongzi, are you sure? Solitary Wolf asked as the doubt in his eyes deepened. To think that they were so excited just a moment ago. Could it be that the person Wang Chong wanted them to capture was this old woodcutter? Wasn't that a little too ridiculous? The others sat on their horses. Although they didn't say anything, their eyes revealed the same puzzlement. Ha ha ha. Hearing their words, Wang Chong burst into laughter. Elders, I've said that I'll bring you to King Sojurim. So naturally, I'll bring you to him. Men, surround this place for me. Yes, Lord. In an instant, dozens of Imperial Army cavalrymen, who were brimming with vigor and exuding powerful auras, surrounded the shabby woodshed without saying a word. Upon seeing this sight, the old woodcutter's heart sank. Ha ha ha, King Sojurim. To think that you, as a member of the Goguryeo royal family, would actually think of disguising as an old woodcutter. Wang Chong placed his hands on the back of his steed, and his body leaned forward slightly as he stared at the old woodcutter with interest. The battle in the monastery had ended, and he had reaped a huge harvest. Seeing how King Sojurim, who was disguised as a woodcutter, thought that he was being discreet, he decided to wait patiently for the other party to return to the capital first, before leading his men to rush over. Thinking back to the Goguryeo spy who had stirred up 2 storms in the Central Plains in his previous life, and looking at the old woodcutter before him whose face was covered in soot and dust, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel an indescribable sense of comedy. He couldn't help but burst into laughter. With so many experts around, Wang Chong wasn't afraid that the other party would escape. King Sojurim, you've worked hard. You managed to disguise yourself as an old woodcutter with soot, mud, and dry wood. Even your speech is so similar. And your fluency in the language of the Central Plains. You must have put in a lot of effort, right? Wang Chong mocked. I don't know what Gongzi is talking about. The old woodcutter shook his head furiously. His heart had sunk, but he didn't show it on his face. What in the world was going on? Thoughts flashed across the old woodcutter's mind, but he couldn't figure out what had attracted the attention of the imperial army of the Tang dynasty. Wang Gongzi, I would love to find King Sojurim to avenge my humiliation. However, are you sure that this is King Sojurim? Ma Yinlong turned his head around and asked with a grim tone. It was rare for Wang Chong to hear such a tone from him, and judging from his expression, Wang Chong could tell that the other party was speaking to him seriously. Clearly, Ma Yinlong didn't think that the other party was the King Sojurim he was looking for. It was already a blessing that he didn't fly into a rage on the spot. It's a pity that you didn't recognize your enemy of 15 years. Looking at Ma Yinlong's complexion, Wang Chong sighed and sighed. Logically speaking, Ma Yinlong should have had a deep impression of King Sojurim. However, it was hard to say whether Ma Yinlong's eye of discernment was simply too poor for him to be unable to recognize his mortal enemy, or that King Sojurim's disguise art was simply too powerful. Not only did he alter his appearance, he even altered his disposition. Even his old nemesis, Ma Yinlong, was unable to recognize him. But regardless of which it was, Wang Chong knew that he had to give him an explanation. Otherwise, the 4 might really think that he was trying to fool them, and that would erase the goodwill they had for him. The eagle. Do you still remember the old woodcutter I asked you to keep an eye on a few days ago? Wang Chong turned around and asked. I do. Isn't he just a woodcutter? The eagle replied in astonishment. But didn't we look into it? There's nothing wrong with that woodcutter. He only goes to the monastery to deliver a bundle of firewood, and he only stays there for a few seconds a day. Noticing the doubtful gazes from the others, the eagle smiled awkwardly. Scratching his head, he hurriedly explained the matter that had happened a few days ago. This had happened 3 days ago. At the time, Old Eagle had sent a few large birds to scout the surroundings of the monastery. Among them was an old woodcutter. Back then, Wang Chong had him check on everyone. This old woodcutter was one of them. However, back then, the eagle had confirmed that there was nothing wrong with him. He was just an old woodcutter who delivered firewood to the monastery. The time he stayed there was always very short, and his activities were very regular as well. He had never stepped into the monastery before. Back then, Wang Chong didn't say anything, only instructing him to send a nightingale to follow the old woodcutter. In the past 15 years, the eagle had trained all kinds of birds other than eagles. This was to avoid being discovered. Back then, the Goguryans were extremely familiar with his eagles, and they could even recognize them from afar. That was how the eagle had managed to develop this new ability. However, Even the eagle himself had forgotten about the old woodcutter. Chapter 262. Ha ha ha, the eagle, your thinking is too simple. Wang Chong laughed heartily. The eagle's thinking was too simple. Did he think that the eagle would share a nightingale with him just for fun? More than 1,000 Goguryeo elites traversed the remote mountains for 4 months. And they even built a monastery. Do you really think that King Sojurem will stand by idly and watch after expending so much effort on such a huge matter? Since he isn't in the monastery, I can guarantee that he is in the vicinity. And from a distance, he is able to observe the entire operation in the monastery. Wang Chong's voice was powerful and brimming with confidence. This was no longer a conjecture. He was certain that the old woodsman before him was the elusive King Sojurem of Goguryeo. Wang. The old woodsman's heart immediately sank. He didn't expect this lad from the Wang clan to be so meticulous. He had always been a secretive person, such that even his subordinates didn't know of his whereabouts. Yet, to think that Wang Chong would be able to deduce the truth from this aspect. Furthermore, King Sojurem has always been a cautious person. He even replaced the monks in the monastery with Goguryans. Do you really think that they would let an unknown old woodcutter handle such a big matter, like assassinating a civil and military official? Wang Chong sneered coldly. As the saying goes, out of 100 secrets, there's bound to be a loophole. To have an old woodcutter deliver firewood to the monastery for cooking, even though he did not enter the monastery each time, if he were to accidentally see or discover something, become suspicious and report it to the imperial court, wouldn't all his previous efforts go to waste? No matter how he thought about it, he could only think of the old woodsman, who delivered firewood to the monastery every day, as the most suspicious person. Wang. Initially, everyone was doubtful of Wang Chong's words, but after hearing his words, the old woodsman before them became more and more suspicious. Indeed, the 1,000 Goguryeo elites were all true martial realm experts. It was impossible for King Sojurem to ignore such a huge matter. They had searched the vicinity of the monastery, but they couldn't find him inside. Just as Wang Chong had said, there was only one possibility. King Sojurem was in the vicinity, and he had been monitoring the entire operation. Given King Sojurem's cautious nature, it was entirely possible for him to do such a thing. Furthermore, how could someone as cautious as King Sojurem be so careless as to allow an outsider to deliver firewood to him every day? The more they thought about it, the more suspicious they became. Even Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin had a suspicious look in his eyes. Who are you? With a hand on the saber by his waist, Ma Yinlong gathered his strength and stared at King Sojurem with a grim expression. Masters, I'm just a woodcutter. I don't know what you're talking about. The old woodcutter hurriedly retreated and waved his hands in panic. Young master, your joke is too much. I'm just an ordinary person. I have no idea who this King Sojurem is. The fear on the old woodcutter's face caused everyone to hesitate once more. Could it be that there was really a mistake? Judging from his weak footsteps, he was indeed an ordinary person. Ha ha ha, King Sojurem. I heard that you're a formidable figure. Who would have thought that you would still try to act shamelessly at this point in time? We're all smart people here. Even if you want to put on an act, you should at least change your shoes first. Wang Chong looked down at the old woodcutter from the back of his steed with a sneer on his face. His words immediately attracted everyone's attention to the old woodcutter's feet. It would have been fine if Wang Chong hadn't said anything, but the moment he said it, everyone noticed that beneath the old woodcutter's tattered gray robe, there was a pair of white silk shoes with cloud patterns. The old woodcutter also noticed the shoes on his feet, and his face flickered between green and red. He had always been a careful person, taking care of every single detail. Thus, after entering the monastery, other than changing into the clothes of a silk merchant, he even changed out of his shoes. Just that, he didn't think that he wouldn't have enough time to change back into his original shoes. How could an old woodcutter who relied on gathering firewood for a living be able to afford a pair of silk shoes with cloud patterns? The old woodcutter had never thought that he would lose to a pair of shoes. Even if he wanted to deny it, he knew that he couldn't do so anymore. Since he's in disguise, he must have more than one set of clothes. A few of you go and search his room. There must be other clothes, and they are definitely not something an old woodsman can afford. Wang Chong smiled as he sat on his horse, a confident look on his face. King Sojuram, are you still trying to deny it? Bastard, it's really you. Ma Yinlong's eyes reddened. No matter how slow he was, he could tell that there was something wrong with the old woodcutter. Boom! A majestic aura that was as vast as the mountains and seas erupted from his body. At the same time, a destructive stellar energy burst forth from his body. The black stellar energy burst forth with a destructive might, and as soon as it appeared, it crashed toward the old woodcutter. Boom! A deafening explosion echoed in the air. Ma Yinlong's charge was even faster than his charge, and the immense force sent him flying back. The destructive black torrent was destroyed in a single move. A powerful gale swept through the surroundings, raising a cloud of dust. The war steeds neighed, and they retreated in fear. Boom! Almost at the same instant that Ma Yinlong was sent flying, a custom-made arrow shrouded in a destructive aura suddenly appeared in the courtyard, and shot toward the old woodcutter with the speed of a thunderbolt. Luo Chong, who was hiding in the back, also made his move. Luo Chong's archery had far surpassed that of all master archers that Wang Chong had seen. His arrows were as swift as lightning, and there was no one who could dodge them. Furthermore, the immense force behind the arrow was a sure kill, pinning the other party to the ground. Even a true martial realm expert wouldn't be able to withstand a single arrow from him. Wang, a hand like an iron pincer, grabbed the shaft of the arrow, firmly grasping Luo Chong's sure kill arrow and blocking it. Wang. Upon seeing this sight, even Ma Yinlong stopped in his tracks. Steel Arms, the Eagle, and Solitary Wolf, who were prepared to charge forward, also halted their steps. 800 meters away, Luo Chong held the arrow in his hand tightly. His eyes, which were the only part of his body that was exposed, revealed an incomparably grim expression. This fellow is actually so powerful. Wang Chong took in a deep breath as a chill ran down his spine. Ma Yinlong and Luo Chong were the two strongest people by his side. The first time he met Ma Yinlong at the Bureau of Personnel, the latter's unique black stellar energy had left a deep impression on Wang Chong. Wang Chong felt that there was nothing in the world that he couldn't destroy. As for Luo Chong, the master archer appointed by the King of Song, had completely changed Wang Chong's understanding of master archers. Even a true martial realm expert wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from him. In just a single move, he would be pinned to the ground. This was no different from the god of death. With this person behind him, Wang Chong felt a sense of security. These two were the top experts that Wang Chong had ever seen. But even with their combined strength, they were still unable to stop this old woodsman. In fact, he even managed to grab Luo Chong's arrow in midair with his bare hands. He had never seen such a situation before. Wang Chong urged his steed to retreat. For the first time, he felt a strong sense of danger. Wang Chong had a feeling that he had greatly underestimated this famous Gogrian spy. Standing on the spot, the old woodsman held the arrow in his hand, and beneath his slightly slanted bamboo hat, a sinister chuckle sounded. To think that someone would see through my identity just because of a pair of shoes. Young man, I have truly underestimated you. You have spoiled so many of my plans. I was planning to kill you later, but to think that you would be in such a hurry. Shua. His left hand grabbed the bamboo hat on his head and flung it to the ground. At the same time, Kacha, the arrow in his right hand, was snapped into two. The old woodsman slowly raised his head and removed the tattered mask that had been damaged by the deluge of stellar energy in the previous clash. In the next instant, an unfamiliar middle-aged man appeared before everyone's eyes. His eyes were long and narrow, and he exuded a cunning and cautious aura. On the other hand, his thick eyebrows seemed to carry an intense, killing intent. Anyone who saw him would feel a deep sense of danger. Only the viciousness of a wolf could subdue his subordinates. Only the cunning of a fox could ensure that no matter what kind of danger he was in, he would be able to escape unscathed. Wang Chong had never met King Sojuram before, but from those eyes and that pair of thick eyebrows, Wang Chong could tell that this person was King Sojuram. This person's aura was vicious and dangerous. No assassin or killer would have such an aura. Even the 3 Gogrian leaders in the monastery immediately bowed down before him. Gongzi, be careful. Mayasame Ayaka immediately felt a strong sense of danger. She hurriedly lowered herself to the ground and shielded Wang Chong. This person was simply too frightening, and his cultivation was simply too high. King Sojuram, I will kill you. Seeing the face before them, the eyes of Ma Yinlong, the eagle, solitary wolf, and steel arms reddened. There was no longer any doubt in their minds. Roar. Without any hesitation. Ping pim 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 pim. For losers, clowns, the old woodcutter or King Sojuram slapped his left hand behind him, and the bundle of firewood on his back exploded into pieces. 3 gleaming Gogrian sabers fell into his hands. Boom! A powerful surge of stellar energy, mixed with a sharp saber chi, burst forth like a hurricane. With a single jolt, Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the eagle, and solitary wolf were all sent flying. Too powerful. At this moment, King Sojuram's aura was on full display. The image of an old woodcutter was nowhere to be seen. Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the eagle, and solitary wolf, other than the eagle, whose cultivation was at true martial realm. The other 3 were at profound martial realm 1 Dan. Yet, the 4 of them combined weren't a match for King Sojuram. Not only so, the 3 Gogrian sabers in King Sojuram's hands exuded a lethal and dangerous aura. Lad, since you've foiled my plans time and time again, I'll start with you. After knocking back Ma Yinlong and the others, King Sojuram ignored them and charged straight for Wang Chong. Of all of them, Wang Chong was the easiest to kill. And he was the one he wanted to kill the most at the moment. This young lad of the Wang clan seemed to be in his teens, but he felt like he was being held back at every turn. If he didn't get rid of the other party, King Sojuram wouldn't be able to carry out his plan in peace. That lad was too smart. Furthermore, King Sojuram had a feeling that if he didn't get rid of the other party soon, the other party would grow into a threat to the empire. By then, it would be too late. After killing this lad, he could kill a few more Imperial Army members to vent his anger. By then, he would have plenty of time to hide in the city or escape through the tunnel. Even if there were guards guarding the tunnel, he would still be able to escape with his cultivation. Die. Chapter 263. King Sojuram had actually abandoned Long Yinlong and the others to deal with the weak Wang Chong. Putting aside Long Yinlong, even Wang Chong was taken aback by this sight. Gongzi, be careful. Mayasame Ayaka was alarmed. She immediately drew her daggers. But with a flash of light, another figure appeared in front of Wang Chong. His speed was much faster than Mayasame Ayaka's. Chong'er, run. In that instant, Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin sensed the danger and stepped in front of Wang Chong. Boom! A majestic blast of energy erupted, sending Li Lin flying through the air. Even Li Lin wasn't a match for King Sojuram's fearsome saber chi. However, Li Lin's move wasn't completely ineffective either. He managed to neutralize 2 of the 3 saber chi. Boom! With a flash of black light, the final saber chi was destroyed by Luo Chang's arrow from 800 meters away. Hee, no one will be able to save you. King Sojuram laughed coldly, reminiscent of the sound of death. Xiao! In the instant that the 3 saber chi were deflected, King Sojuram flicked his wrist, and a bizarrely shaped black spiraling dart arced through the air toward Wang Chong. The space in the path of the black spiraling dart began to distort, and the boundless might it exuded seemed to have set the air ablaze. Not good. Wang Chong felt a chill run down his spine. An intense sense of danger surged toward him like a tidal wave, leaving his scalp numb and hair standing on end. King Sojuram's determination to kill him had reached an indescribable level. Wang Chong felt that no matter what price the other party had to pay, he was determined to kill him first. Xiao xiao xiao. With no time to think, Wang Chong slapped the back of his steed and leaped forward. At the same time, he flicked his wrist and shot out 6 sword chi of massacre from his fingers. The martial arts experience he had accumulated in his previous life played a crucial role at this moment. It was impossible for an Origin Energy Tier 9 martial artist to hit King Sojuram's black spiraling dart, but 3 of Wang Chong's 6 sword chi managed to strike it. Chi. His clothes were torn apart, and the sharp edge of the dart left a red mark on Wang Chang's shoulder. That was close. Wang Chang's heart chilled. The slightest error could lead to an error of 1,000 li. If he had not used his finger energy 3 times, the sharpness of that black dart would have long since severed his arm, or perhaps even cut off his entire arm from the shoulder up. All Imperial Army members, stop him. Don't let King Sojram get away. Wang Chong issued an order, and as soon as he landed on the ground, he leaped onto the steed of another Imperial Army member. When the Imperial Army members surrounded the firewood hut, they left their steeds outside. At this moment, they became Wang Chong's last hope. Jaya! Wang Chong whipped his steed and galloped into the distance. In the vicinity of the firewood hut, he was the weakest. The bane of the battlefield halo was useless against King Sojram. In other words, given his current strength, he would surely die if he were to encounter King Sojram. For a profound martial realm expert, killing an origin energy cultivator was as easy as slaughtering a chicken. How is this possible? Looking at Wang Chong's back, King Sojram was dumbfounded. In terms of speed, his spiral dart wasn't any slower than Luo Chong's. Given Wang Chong's strength, he wouldn't even be able to see it clearly, let alone dodge it. Yet, not only did Wang Chong manage to dodge it, he even struck his spiral dart thrice with his sword chi. Under normal circumstances, such a feat was impossible. Charge together. Don't let him get away. In that instant, dozens of Imperial Army soldiers rushed forward from all directions and surrounded Zhang Xian. Strength was fearsome, but on the battlefield, it wasn't just individual strength that determined the outcome of a battle. It was normal for ants to bite an elephant to death on the battlefield. Hong Long. In an instant, Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the Eagle, Solitary Wolf, and Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin charged forward. At the same time, Luo Chong made his move as well. Arrows after arrows flew toward the back of Wang Chong with the momentum of a thunderbolt. In such a chaotic battle, even though it was disadvantageous to his archery, it was still sufficient to stop King Sojram from pursuing Wang Chong. Hong Long. With just a single strike, 6 Imperial Army members were sent flying, spurting blood from their mouths. Boom! Yet another surge of saber chi sent another group of Imperial Army members flying. Boom! Another saber chi shot out, and in the blink of an eye, another group of Imperial Army soldiers were sent flying while screaming in pain. Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the Eagle, Solitary Wolf, Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin, and the rest of the Imperial Army members exerted their full strength, but they were still barely able to surround King Sojram. But from the looks of it, it seemed like King Sojram would be able to break through the encirclement at any moment. Too powerful. Everyone's complexion turned awful upon seeing this sight. Even though they were both proficient in the 3-saber art, King Sojram was much stronger than the 3 Gogrian leaders back in the monastery. Every time his saber flashed, blood would surely splatter. His ferocity left everyone shocked. In King Sojram's hands, the 3 sabers seemed to have come to life, and each of them seemed like a ferocious beast ready to devour its prey. In just a short period of time, Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the Eagle, Solitary Wolf, and Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin were all injured. Even the dark steel heavy armor on Li Lin's body had one deep blade mark after another plowed out, looking ghastly. Unlike Dai Hyansik and the other 3 Gogrian generals, King Sojram was much more cunning. His saber chi forced the Imperial Army members to constantly change their positions. While he was moving, King Sojram paid special attention to using the bodies of others to block the attacks of the Imperial Army members. As such, even though the battle was intense, and the Imperial Army members had King Sojram surrounded, only a handful of them were able to land a direct hit on him. Not only were the Imperial Army members unable to display their might, they were even being used by King Sojram to hinder the attacks of Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the Eagle, and the others. The encirclement around King Sojram was on the verge of collapsing. These Imperial Army members don't know any collaborative formations, so they aren't able to bring out the full might of their numbers. At a glance, Wang Chong saw the crux of the problem and began to worry. There was nothing he could do about it. But after a moment of contemplation, Wang Chong still came up with an idea. All Imperial Army members form groups of 8. 8 of you will participate in the assault, and the rest will retreat to prevent King Sojurum from escaping. Also send a signal for reinforcements. Wang. King Sojurum's face warped in shock. Even in the midst of the chaotic battle, he abruptly lifted his head and stared at Wang Chong through the rain of blades. There was a strong killing intent in his eyes. Even if this teenager was weak and didn't even have the qualifications to participate in the siege, he still gave him the greatest sense of danger. His decisiveness in commanding the other Imperial Army members to retreat from the encirclement was only secondary. What truly made him feel threatened was the signal for reinforcements. This was an important location of the Tang dynasty. Even though the sky was still dark, there weren't many people in the area. But once the signal was sent, a large number of experts would rush over in an instant. No matter how powerful he was, he would still die here. Wang Chong's words struck at his greatest weakness. It seems like I won't be able to continue this battle without killing you. King Sojurum narrowed his eyes coldly. The killing intent he emanated caused the surrounding temperature to plummet. Even from 100 meters away, Wang Chong could feel a strong sense of danger. Do as he says. Hurry! A loud roar echoed in the surroundings. At this moment, the only one who was still able to maintain his composure and command the other Imperial Army members was Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin. Regardless of what Wang Chong said, Li Lin trusted him 100%. And he would do as he was told. Wang. Under his command, other than the 8 Imperial Army captains, the others immediately retreated. Yi. Almost at the same time, an Imperial Army soldier quickly took out a cylindrical firework from his waist. After lighting it up, a thick cloud of white smoke, accompanied by blinding light and heat, rose into the sky. Early in the morning, when the sky was still dark, the deafening explosion and blinding light immediately attracted a lot of attention in the capital. The patrol officers, the Imperial Army at the city gates, the patrolling soldiers, and the royal court. Almost everyone saw the bright fireworks signal in the sky. Dee-da-da! An invisible shockwave spread into the surroundings. And in the blink of an eye, groups of black-armored cavalrymen charged toward the source of the signal. Damn it! Upon seeing the signal, King Sojurum's face darkened as though the bottom of a wok. After the surrounding Imperial Army members retreated, leaving behind the 8 Imperial Army captains to deal with Wang Chong, King Sojurum's killing intent toward Wang Chong rose to a new height. Boom! 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 After taking a few slashes from Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the Eagle and Solitary Wolf, King Sojurum executed 3 consecutive slashes, and a ferocious stellar energy swept across the surroundings. He actually managed to force his way out of the encirclement. This is bad, don't let him escape. Everyone's faces paled. Boom boom boom. Like a bolt of lightning, King Sojurum burst forth with his stellar energy, and sent a dozen Imperial Army captains flying. Making use of the opening in the encirclement, he actually managed to force his way out of the encirclement. So, in an instant, King Sojurum shot out more than a dozen black spiraling darts, forcing the crowd back. At the same time, he dashed toward Wang Chong as though a bolt of lightning. In that instant, he left 2 long trails of air behind him. The killing intent in King Sojurum's heart was so intense that even the surrounding space was warping. No matter what, he was determined to kill that lad today. Hong Long, a distance of several dozen zhang, was covered in the blink of an eye. Even before he arrived, his aura had already locked onto Wang Chong, and his saber chi and darts were already flying toward him. This is bad. Wang Chong turned his steed around and galloped away. You won't be able to escape. King Sojurum charged forward at a speed even faster than a galloping horse. A mocking glint flashed in his eyes, as though a cat eyeing a mouse. If Wang Chong hadn't stood out so much, he might have waited for a while longer before killing him. But since that lad thought himself clever, he couldn't be blamed for this. It didn't matter how many soldiers the Tang dynasty sent over, or how fast their reinforcements arrived. He could easily escape after killing that lad. Given his wits, there were simply too many ways for him to escape from this place. Hong! Just as King Sojurum was about to catch up to Wang Chong, a figure suddenly burst out from the walls of a nearby house. and charged right into King Sojuram's saber chi. Boom! The saber chi shattered, the stellar energy dissipated, and the killing intent in the air dissipated in an instant. Right in front of King Sojuram, a green-robed elder with a stoic expression and an unfathomable aura suddenly appeared. Chapter 264. In an instant, the surroundings of the woodshed fell silent. Everyone stared at the figure that had suddenly appeared with their mouths agape and a look of shock on their faces. Everyone had witnessed how powerful King Sojuram was. Even Ma Yinlong, the eagle, solitary wolf, steel arms, and Wang Chang's uncle Li Lin weren't a match for him. Furthermore, the other imperial army members were also unable to break out of the encirclement. The master archer dispatched by the king of Song, Luo Chong, could kill a true martial realm cultivator, as though he was slaughtering a chicken. Yet, King Sojuram was able to catch him bare-handedly. Yet, a person of such caliber actually had his protective stellar energy shattered easily, and was lifted up. Oh well, old butler? Li Lin looked at the mountain-like figure on the long street, with a look of shock in his eyes. The person who had suddenly appeared to save Wang Chong was none other than the old butler of the king of Song. How is this possible? Li Lin muttered. This was the first time he had realized that the old butler of the king of Song was an expert of such a level. Lad, is this the Gogrian spy king you are looking for? On the street, the old butler ignored the dumbfounded crowd and turned to look at Wang Chong said. His face was nonchalant. King Sojuram was groaning in his hands, but the latter was unable to do anything at all. He couldn't even lift his wrist. In the rear, Wang Chong had long since been dumbfounded by this sight. The shock he felt wasn't any less than the others. This was also the first time he had realized that the old butler was so powerful. In the past, Wang Chong had never felt the other party's presence before. This was the first time he felt that the old butler was unfathomable. To think that the person sent by the king of Song would be him. Wang Chong muttered. Even though Wang Chong was astonished, he wasn't too surprised. Because he was the one who had invited the old butler over. Before this operation, Wang Chong had already visited the king of Song and obtained a promise from him that he would send experts to help him at the critical moment. However, Wang Chong did not expect that the expert mentioned by the king of Song was actually the old butler. Haha, old butler, it's him. I'll have to trouble you with this. Wang Chong smiled, and his expression quickly returned to normal. Hee. Hearing those words, King Sojuram let out a panicked groan as he struggled with all his might. Kacha! The old butler tightened his grip and snapped King Sojuram's neck as though he was a chicken. Bang! With a flick of his wrist, the old butler tossed King Sojuram's corpse onto the ground before Ma Yin and the others. Little guy, I've already killed him for you. You'll have to deal with the rest yourself. The old butler had a carefree expression on his face. After he finished speaking, he clapped his hands, turned around, and left as if he had done something insignificant. Thank you, elder. Wang Chong respectfully lowered his head and watched as the old butler left. Only then did he dismount from the back of his steed. At the same time, Li Lin, Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, Eagle, and the other imperial army members surrounded King Sojuram. He's dead. He's really dead. Inconceivable. That fellow nearly got away. That the group surrounded King Sojuram's corpse with complicated emotions in their hearts. That fellow was cunning, but at the same time, he was also ferocious and vicious, possessing the personality of both a fox and a wolf. In the past 15 years, he had been doing whatever he wanted in the capital of the Tang dynasty. Spying, assassinating, destroying. There was nothing he didn't know how to do. Yet, at this moment, he was hiding on the ground motionlessly, with a look of fear on his face. The more one experienced King Sojuram's viciousness, the more they understood how difficult it was to kill this Gogrian spy. This matter has finally come to an end. Looking at the corpse on the ground, Wang Chong heaved a long sigh of relief. Killing King Sojuram wasn't just to resolve the assassination and destruction that had yet to be carried out. It was also to protect the honor and dignity of the Tang dynasty. The Central Plains would never allow an outsider to use this place as their backyard and wreak havoc. Congratulations to user for killing King Sojuram. and neutralizing the assassination of the Goguryeo Empire. You are rewarded with 20 destiny energy. The long-awaited voice finally sounded in his head. Hearing this familiar voice, a smile slowly appeared on Wang Chong's face. But in the next moment, something unexpected happened. Congratulations to user for killing 1581 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1582 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1583 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1588 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1589 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. Congratulations to user for killing 1590 soldiers of the Goguryeo Empire. A raging wind blew, and an invisible energy gathered from the surroundings and gushed into Wang Chong's body. In a short period of time, Wang Chong could feel his bane of the battlefield rising by a notch, and the number of Goguryeo soldiers he killed also increased by 10. Killing a single King Sojurem is equivalent to killing 10 Goguryeo soldiers? Wang Chong was surprised. Without the imperial army general to share the fruits of his labor, Wang Chong was able to enjoy the benefits of killing King Sojurem alone. In an instant, the number of bane of the battlefield kills increased by 10. This was the first time Wang Chong had realized that killing a top-notch general could be converted into killing a low-tier soldier. "Uncle, I'll leave the rest to you," Wang Chong said. Li Lin stood his sword on the spot, and a smile crept onto his face. He understood Wang Chong's intentions. With King Sojurem's corpse, he would be the greatest contributor to this operation. This was a huge contribution. As long as he could raise his martial arts, it would only be a matter of time before he became a commander of the imperial army. The rumbling of hooves could be heard from afar. Thus, Wang Chong quickly left the area before the city guards and the other scouts arrived. Boom! When the corpse of King Sojurem, the culprit who assassinated many officials of the Tang dynasty, appeared in the capital 15 years ago, a huge uproar broke out in the capital. Furthermore, the notice that the imperial court had quickly put up made this matter even more certain. The prestigious clans and officials who were assassinated back then burst into an uproar. Some of the descendants of the officials who had their entire families killed back then burst into tears. Because of this matter, the Wang clan received the gratitude of the entire capital's officials. Many of them even paid him a visit to express their gratitude. As a result, the reputation of Duke Jiu's lineage soared in the capital. This was something that Wang Chong couldn't have imagined at the start. In fact, due to King Sojurem's death, the Holy Emperor even made an exception to receive Li Lin, who had participated in the operation, as well as Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the Eagle and Solitary Wolf, who had served in the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments back then. This matter caused quite a commotion among the Hu and foreign tribes in the capital as well. King Sojurem was nicknamed the Fox of Goguryeo. Even though almost no one in the capital of the Tang dynasty had seen his face before, his name still reverberated like thunder in the ears of the Hu. Even so, his name resounded like thunder in the ears of the Hu. The series of feats he had done had pushed his influence to the peak. In the capital of the Tang dynasty, he was definitely one of the top spies. King Sojurem's death was a huge shock to everyone. The capital fell into a rare period of silence. Even the domineering Goguryans fell silent out of fear, becoming much more obedient, damn it. In the distant northeast of the Tang dynasty, east of the Anong Protectorate Manor, in the capital of the Goguryeo Empire, a figure smashed his fist on a table. Wang Chong, I'll remember you. One day, you'll pay the price for your actions." That figure clenched his jaws furiously as a bone-piercing hatred flashed in his eyes. Time flew. Regardless of the commotion in the outside world, after the incident with King Sojurem, Wang Chong enjoyed his peaceful yet affluent life. "Chonger, eat some food, eat some more food. Look at you, you've lost so much weight out there. This is the sea cucumber your father had General Zhang send over from Lingnan. It's very nutritious, so eat more." In the lounge of the Wang family residence, Madame Wang picked up a large piece of sea cucumber and placed it into Wang Chong's bowl with a doting expression. His little sister wasn't around, His father and big brother were in the army, and his second brother was locked up in the imperial prison. Thus, Wang Chong would do his best to accompany his mother. However, upon hearing his mother's words, Wang Chong's chopsticks froze for a moment. General Zhang? Lingnan. Wang Chong stared in shock at the juicy sea cucumber in the white jade bowl, which had been soaked in soup, and was overflowing with fresh and tender meat. His mother might not understand it, but how could Wang Chong not understand? His father rarely sent anything over, needless to say sea cucumber. With just a few mouthfuls, Wang Chong could tell that this wasn't any ordinary sea cucumber, but the most valuable first-grade immortal soup jade sea cucumber. Other than having a good texture, it was said to be able to extend one's lifespan and nourish one's body, making one feel younger. The concubines in the palace loved to use this to beautify their skin. The Wang Chong clan was also a wealthy clan. Wang Chong had earned more than 1,000,000 gold taels from Wuxia steel. Initially, Wang Chong thought that his mother had bought it from outside, but it seemed like that wasn't the case at all. Father doesn't have any friends with General Zhang, much less Lingnan. Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. His mother might not understand the military, but how could Wang Chong not? As someone who had lived through 2 lifetimes, Wang Chong knew all of his father's acquaintances and subordinates. There weren't many generals with the surname Zhang in the military, not to mention, his father had never been to Lingnan. So how could there be a general with the surname Zhang to help him bring sea cucumber? General Zhang, General Zhang. How could this be General Zhang? He must be Zhangqiu Jinxiong. Thinking back, Wang Chong's mind suddenly became clear. The Wang clan had helped Zhangqiu Jinxiong a lot in his bid to enter the royal court. This time, even before he had arrived at the capital, he had already sent several boxes of superior sea cucumbers over. This person is truly an incredible person. Wang Chong chuckled inwardly upon knowing who the gift was. If his father was here, he would never accept it. However, Wang Chong was different. Knowing that it was a gift from Zhangqiu Jinxiong, Wang Chong felt even more at ease. Chong, what's wrong? Madame Wang asked in astonishment. It's nothing, hee. Wang Chong quickly recovered from his daze and began wolfing down the sea cucumber. Judging from the time, Zhangqiu Jinxiong should be arriving at the capital soon. Wang Chong thought. Jiannan was extremely far away from the capital, but Wang Chong was certain that Zhangqiu Jinxiong was traveling day and night. There was no way he could calculate the distance based on the distance traveled. This was a crucial moment for the selection of the Minister of War, so it would be weird if Zhangqiu Jinxiong didn't sit still. Come, it's about time for us to meet. This thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind, and he quickly lowered his head. Chapter 265. Leaving the lounge, Wang Chong headed straight for his study. That was where Wang Chong cultivated. Unexpectedly, by the time Wang Chong entered the study, there were already 4 figures standing inside. Before Wang Chong could say anything, put on. One figure after another kneeled in front of Wang Chong with a momentum that could topple mountains and topple jade pillars. Elder Ma, what are you all doing? Alarmed, Wang Chong hurriedly dodged to the side. Wang Chong didn't dare to accept such a huge gesture. Wang Gongzi, words cannot express our gratitude to you. Please accept our kowtow. The 4 in the room were Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, the Eagle, and Solitary Wolf. With reddened eyes, they abruptly bowed to Wang Chong. Seniors, you're really trying to kill me. How could Wang Chong dare to accept it? At the same time, he was also surprised. He remembered that Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, and the Eagle had just entered the royal palace to meet the emperor. They should be celebrating by now. So why would they suddenly appear here? Gongzi, you can choose not to accept it, but we have to pay our respects. It has been 15 years. If not for Gongzi, we might never have been able to wash away the humiliation we have suffered. With reddened eyes, Ma Yinlong and a few others kowtowed a few times before standing up. Wang Chong could sense the emotions in their hearts, and he was deeply moved. Be it Ma Yinlong, Steel Arms, or the Eagle, they were all unyielding men of the Tang dynasty. It had been 15 years since the incident back then, but even though they had concealed their identities, they still couldn't forget it. Some were for themselves, some were for the Tang dynasty, and some were for their comrades who had been wronged back then. They were truly worthy of respect. Elders, you are exaggerating. King Sojurem has been executed, and everything is in the past now. Wang Chong wishes to congratulate you all on returning to the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments. Wang Chong was genuinely happy for the four of them. He had already received news that after meeting the emperor in the palace, the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Justice had already invited them back. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Ma Yinlong, the eagle, steel arms, and solitary wolf glanced at one another and smiled. Speaking of which, we're also here for this matter. We've already rejected the invitation from the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Punishments, Ma Yinlong said. Wang Chong's body shook slightly, his face full of surprise. Why? The four of them were originally from the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Justice, but they were banished because of what happened back then. Based on Wang Chong's understanding, the four of them should be hoping to return to the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Justice. To think that Ma Yinlong and the others would reject him, this was out of Wang Chong's expectations. Haha, when I was just demoted to the Ministry of Personnel, I was indeed thinking about washing away my shame and returning to the Ministry of Justice. But it's been 15 years, no matter how many thoughts I have, I've already become indifferent. Indeed, back then, we were still youngsters in our 20s, but looking at us now, we're already in our 40s. Things are still the same, but people have changed. Our colleagues from back then are no longer around. Do we still have to compete with a bunch of youngsters? What the eagle said is what I'm thinking as well. Our wish is already fulfilled as long as we can avenge the humiliation of our colleagues from back then. Furthermore, the positions in both the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Punishments are already full. If we were to join them recklessly, and they even have to arrange special positions for us, some youngsters will be implicated. What's the point of that? Haha. I've already gotten used to it after spending so many years outside. I'm really not used to it. I'm not going back. I'm not going back. The group waved their hands casually as they expressed their thoughts. Wang Chong looked at the four of them. Their expressions were a little complicated, but their eyes were exceptionally resolute. Clearly, they had been contemplating this matter for a very long time, and they couldn't be any more determined. No matter what, this is the decision of the elders, and Wang Chong will respect it. May I know what plans the elders have for the future? Wang Chong said. Hearing that they weren't going to the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Punishments, Wang Chong faintly had some thoughts. However, Wang Chong wasn't confident in this matter. Whether it would succeed or not would depend on their wishes. Haha, this is also what we wanted to say next. If young master doesn't mind, I hope to be able to follow by young master's side in the future. The one who said this was the eagle. As he spoke, he took a step forward. Me too. If not for young master, I don't know if we would be able to avenge the humiliation we suffered in this lifetime. Young master, please accept me. Lone Wolf also took a step forward and said solemnly, if young master doesn't mind that I only have one arm, please accept me as well. Iron Arms smiled as he stepped forward. Of course not. Where did these seniors come from? How could I possibly turn my back on them? I'm more than happy. Wang Chong was simply overjoyed. He was still wondering whether the four of them would be willing to follow him if they weren't going to join the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Punishments. However, Wang Chong wasn't confident in this matter, and he was still hesitating on how he should turn them down. He didn't expect the four of them to take the initiative to say that they wanted to follow him. Wang Chong had seen how powerful the four of them were. Even though Iron Arms was missing an arm, his offense was still inconceivably powerful. Not to mention, there were quite a few profound martial realm experts among them. Other than the guards in the clan, Wang Chong didn't have any experts by his side. However, the guards in the clan weren't even worth mentioning. Even Mayasame Ayaka could do whatever she wanted in the clan back then. Needless to say, the experts who were even stronger than her. If the four of them were to follow him, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. At this moment, Wang Chong couldn't contain his joy. Of the four, only Ma Yinlong hadn't expressed his stance yet. Gongzi, forgive me for not being able to follow you like the others for the time being. Because there's something important that I have to do. After I'm done with that matter, if Gongzi doesn't mind, I'm willing to serve you. Ma Yinlong fell silent for a moment before replying. Deep sorrow could be heard in his voice. Just that. Even I have no idea how long this matter will take. It could be a year, 10 years, or even longer. Oh. Wang Chong was surprised, but he soon chuckled. Hee, don't worry, senior. If there's anything you need, feel free to ask. Everyone had their own secrets. Even though Wang Chong didn't know what would require so much time from Ma Yinlong, he could guess that it had to do with the matter from back then. There's no need for that. Ma Yinlong waved his hands and smiled. I'll have to trouble Gongzi to take care of these old brothers of mine. Gongzi is the descendant of Duke Jiao, and you have the world in your heart. If these old brothers of mine stay by Gongzi's side, they might be of greater use than if they stayed in the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments. The other one is Solitary Wolf. That fellow loves money as much as his life, and I heard that Gongzi is earning money every day. I hope that Gongzi can take good care of him. Ha ha ha. Hearing Ma Yinlong's amusing words, Wang Chong couldn't help but burst into laughter. Elder, rest assured, even if I have other capabilities, I'm still capable of earning money. The group of people couldn't help but laugh. Gongzi, there's no need for you to address us as elders in the future. Just call us by our nicknames Solitary Wolf, the Eagle, and Steel Arms. Ma Yinlong soon left. Watching as the other party's silhouette disappeared through the door, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh. Even though they hadn't worked together for long, the bite of the white tiger from the Bureau of Punishments had left a deep impression in Wang Chong's heart. Elder, rest in peace, Wang Chong thought. After making arrangements for the Eagle, Steel Arms, and Solitary Wolf, Wang Chong got back to work. Even though the matter with the Gogurians had been settled, Wang Chong still had a lot of matters to attend to. Wang Chong's harvest from the encirclement of the Gogurian stronghold was bountiful. Other than a few chests which Wang Chong kept for himself, the rest of the Gogurian ginseng were delivered to the spirit vein by Wang Chong for the younger generation that Wang Chong had selected from the various clans. These people were the future of the Wang clan, as well as Wang Chong's future subordinates. Since Wang Chong didn't have much use for the ginseng himself, he decided to give it to the younger generation first. Following which, Wang Chong summoned Tuoba Gudyuan and had him deal with the Wuxia steel. After settling everything, Wang Chong finally had some free time. Time flew, and unknowingly, 7 to 8 days had passed. Outside the capital, in the depths of the mountains filled with lush greenery, white steam could be seen rising from the peak of the mountain. Amidst the steam, a figure was seated motionlessly on the ground. Spiritual energy was surging in from all directions, gushing into that figure's body. After an unknown period of time, Wang Chong exhaled lightly, and he slowly opened his eyes amidst the white steam. A golden ray of dawn shone from the horizon, piercing through the treetops, dyeing the entire forest golden. Gazing into the distance, one could see a long flight of stairs stretching from the bottom of the mountain all the way to the peak. On the two sides of the ladder, there were countless quaint and elegant pavilions and corridors. The further one went, the more buildings one could see. At the peak of the mountain, one could see a majestic palace complex. There were residential areas, training areas, resting areas, gardens, ponds, fake mountains. Everything was there. Not far away from Wang Chong, a group of young men and women were practicing and sparring in the training field. Loud bangs could be heard, and their punches and kicks were full of vigor. Around them, the Imperial Army instructors invited by Wang Chong held their heads high and puffed out their chests. With a stern look in their eyes, they berated and gave pointers to the younger generation, selected from the various clans. It's not easy. Wang Chong took a deep breath. Looking at the lively scenery around him, he felt a strong sense of pride and accomplishment. After 4 to 5 months, after expending a large amount of manpower, resources, and money, the base that Wang Chong had planned was finally completed with the support of the spirit vein. Even though it was still hidden in the depths of the mountains, to Wang Chong, everything was on the right track. In the future, This would be the capital that he would use to change the world. In the future, I can't just limit myself to the various clans. I have to recruit more people. And I can't just limit myself to this one martial arts base. In the future, I have to build more such bases in the various prefectures. Gazing at the rising sun, Wang Chong felt boundless hope in his heart. This spirit vein was his starting point, but it wasn't his end. In the future, Wang Chong intended to expand this model to the various regions of the Central Plains and recruit more people. The commoners and orphans would be Wang Chong's priority targets. The wealthy merchants of the various regions were also on the list of recruits. In his previous life, he had always stuck to his own views, but he had never thought of making use of his background to make use of this strength. He didn't know that regardless of whether they were rich or poor, they were all the Tang people of the Central Plains before the catastrophe. So how could there be a distinction between rich and poor? It was a waste of this strength and his background. Chonga. Chapter 266. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Wang Chong turned around, only to see a familiar figure staring at him from beneath a towering tree. Master! With a smile, Wang Chong hurried forward to greet the other party. The person beneath the tree was no other than Wang Chong's master on the spirit vein, the evil emperor. It had been a few months since they last met, and the evil emperor had grown much stronger than when Zhang Xian first met him. At the same time, his complexion seemed much better as well. However, the aura he exuded seemed to have become more and more restrained. Unlike the fearsome aura of those of the unorthodox path, his aura seemed to have become gentler and gentler. If one didn't know his background, they would have thought that the gray-robed old man before them was just an ordinary person. Master has changed a lot. Wang Chong looked at his master, who was sipping on a cup of fragrant tea, and he couldn't help but sigh. His master's transformation was obvious. It was as if he was a completely different person from when he first met him. Even though Wang Chong didn't know how it happened, he couldn't help but feel happy for his master in the depths of his heart. How's your cultivation going? The evil emperor put down his teacup and asked. It's still all right. However, I'm still unable to condense my origin energy into white ripples. Wang Chong lowered his head and replied respectfully. Wang Chong had already reached origin energy tier 9, but his origin energy had to be pure. Only after reaching tier 9 pinnacle would he be able to condense white ripples around his origin energy. This formless ripple halo was the most basic form of energy. Once mastered, it would become incredibly powerful, and one's fighting prowess would rise by a notch. This was what Wang Chong had been doing every day on the spirit vein. In order to condense white ripples from origin energy tier 9 to tier 9 pinnacle, one has to compress one's origin energy to the extreme. This is also the reason why I called you here. Haste makes waste. Don't be impatient when cultivating. With your strength, you should be able to make a breakthrough in at least 3 to 5 days. The evil emperor said grimly. Yes, I'll remember your words. Wang Chong said respectfully. No matter how infamous and terrifying the evil emperor was, he treated him so well that he was speechless. Not only did he treat him as a disciple, he treated him like family. Humans have feelings, and Wang Chong had unknowingly treated the evil emperor as his own family. Haha, third brother, so you are here. Suddenly, a childish laughter that sounded like silver bells rang out. Before the voice faded, a skinny and small figure excitedly rushed out from inside. On his head, there were 2 extremely eye-catching goat horn braids. Why are you running? Have you finished your homework? The evil emperor, who had a genial look on his face a moment ago, suddenly put on a stern face and reprimanded sternly. Whoosh! As if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her. The Wang clan's little sister's excited expression came to a screeching halt. A look of fear appeared on her face, but it was quickly replaced by anger. She glared at the demonic emperor old man, clearly unconvinced. What, are you not convinced? What's so great about it? You are already so old, yet you dare to bully a child like me. What's the point of saying all this? If I don't defeat you, don't dream of leaving this place. Old fellow. that seeing the two of them staring at each other as if they were enemies, Wang Chong was on the verge of bursting into laughter. Little sister was born with divine strength and outstanding talent, but her personality was fickle. She was always slacking off, and there was no one in the Wang clan who could control her. Wang Chong wanted to intervene, but it was a pity that he wasn't a match for her. But this time, his little sister had met her nemesis. Acting coquettishly, pleading, acting pitiful, throwing a tantrum, scolding, launching sneak attacks, sneaking away. In the past few months, in order to leave the mountain, his little sister had tried her best. However, all of these methods were useless before the evil emperor. Little sister, you can't blame me for this. You were the one who came here out of curiosity. Wang Chong chuckled inwardly. Third brother, hurry back and gather some soldiers. Call big uncle over. We'll vanquish this old man together. Seeing that she couldn't win against the other party, the Wang family's little sister immediately ran over to look for her brother, with a frenzied look. You must be joking. As if I would agree to it. Wang Chong laughed so hard that his stomach was about to burst. If his little sister knew that he had already informed his mother to allow her to cultivate here peacefully, she would probably be even more frenzied. Little sister, big uncle is extremely busy, and he won't come over. Cousin and I aren't a match for him, so it's useless even if we come. You should just listen to me and cultivate here. When you graduate, you will be able to leave this place. Wang Chong persuaded. I'm going crazy. This old man makes me cultivate every day. The Wang family's little sister grumbled. Clearly, she didn't know that her brother was in cahoots with the old man in her eyes. Old man, just you wait. One day, I will defeat you. The Wang family's little sister pointed a finger at the evil emperor angrily. In the end, she seemed to deflate. Flinging her arms, she walked toward her brother, hoping to seek consolation. Wang Chong didn't know whether to laugh or cry, just as he was about to console her. Haha, I've caught you. Just as she brushed past the evil emperor, a crafty glint flashed across the Wang family's little sister's black eyes. The evil emperor didn't see it, but Wang Chong, who was facing her, saw it clearly. This little sister actually knows how to play tricks. Wang Chong widened his eyes in shock. Was this still the naive little sister he knew? Or could it be that his little sister was forced to display the talent that she didn't have before? But what was even more shocking was yet to come. Pung! The Wang family's little sister suddenly leaped high into the air with a force that didn't match her size. Then, tilting her body, she threw a punch at the evil emperor. Boom! Raging winds blew and stellar energy scattered in all directions. What burst forth from the Wang family's little sister's small fist was an unbelievably terrifying force. Kacha! The tree behind the evil emperor was snapped in half by the strong wind, and the stone slabs on the ground shattered. In Wang Chong's eyes, he could clearly see a dazzling green halo bursting forth from his little sister's small body. Wang Chong had never seen such a huge halo before. Rather than a halo, it was more like a halo. From the halo, Wang Chong could feel the power of the mountains and the earth. Under the effect of this huge green halo, his little sister's aura seemed to fuse with the mountains and forests beneath her. The surging spiritual energy in the spirit vein was attracted to her, and fused with her small fist, multiplying her strength. Then, she smashed her fist toward the evil emperor. Boom! Shockwaves shot out in all directions, and the huge force caused the entire mountain range to tremble slightly. The moment the loud explosion sounded, Wang Chong could clearly hear the faint silhouette of a vast mountain appear behind his little sister. Halo! Halo! My little sister has actually broken through to the true martial realm. In that instant, Wang Chong's mind was in a mess. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Wang Chong wouldn't have believed that his little sister had already broken through her bottleneck and reached the true martial realm after just a few months of training with his master. Furthermore, the halo that she cultivated was unimaginably powerful, far surpassing any true martial realm halo that Wang Chong had seen before. No one in the true martial realm could surpass her strength. His little sister's transformation was truly a complete one, even greater than his own. Regardless of how chaotic Wang Chong's mind was, on the other side, the Wang family's child was howling delicately. Exerting her full strength, she launched a flurry of attacks toward the evil emperor. Boom boom boom. A thick white fog pervaded the area. No matter how the Wang clan's little sister attacked, no matter how much strength she used, the demonic emperor old man would always hold a single hand behind his back and simply raise a finger to block all her attacks. Left, right, up, down, front, back. No matter which direction the attacks came from, the evil emperor remained motionless. That single finger of his was like the world's strongest barrier, blocking all of the Wang family's little sister's attacks. Ah, not again. The Wang family's little sister suddenly flew into a rage. With a somersault, she landed on the ground and puffed her cheeks even more furiously. Humph, old fogey, one day I will surpass you. Furious, the Wang family's little sister harumphed angrily. Without a word, she turned around and dashed into the main hall to cultivate. Master little sister's halo. Wang Chong was bewildered. His little sister was gluttonous and lazy, just waiting for death to come. She spent 3 days fishing and 2 days drying the net, just like him. In his previous life, she had never cultivated any halos. That massive green halo that appeared out of nowhere was unheard of. This was completely out of Wang Chong's expectations. Everything was different from his previous life. You should be able to see it too. This is the halo of mountains, a true martial realm one-dan halo. It allows one to draw energy from the mountains and earth, allowing one's strength to grow tremendously. It can be considered as a type of strength halo, but it's of the highest tier. The evil emperor said. There was no need for him to hide anything from Wang Chong. From the first time he met this little lass, he could already sense her astounding talent and strength. Putting aside 1 in 10,000, it was hard to find even 1 in a million. If not for that, he wouldn't have forcefully taken her in as his disciple and made her stay here to cultivate. What's going on? Wang Chong was bewildered. True martial realm cultivators had strength halos, and strength halos. These halos could amplify a cultivator's strength, but they were definitely not this ridiculous. For his little sister's halo to be able to draw energy from the mountains, this was inconceivable. To a certain extent, it was already close to the profound martial realm halo. Although I don't understand it, I can vaguely guess. Year, month, day, hour are known as the 4 pillars, and each pillar has 2 characters, collectively known as the 8 characters. This is a divination art I dabbled in when I was young. I asked your mother. Your little sister was born in the year of Yue, belonging to the Yin category. If I'm not wrong, she was probably born in the Yin year, the Yin month, the Yin day, and the Yin hour. This is the 8 characters of complete Yin, also known as the moment of extreme Yin. People born at this time are born with the opportunity of heaven and earth, making them different from others. Extreme Yin needs to be compatible with extreme Yang, so her body is extremely attractive to Yang energy. Even if she does nothing, she is born with divine strength. And once she starts cultivating, she can even attract the essence of the mountains. And given her talent, as long as she works a little harder, her future achievements will be limitless. It's even possible for her to surpass the me from back then. The evil emperor sighed as he said this. To be able to take in 2 disciples like this in his later years, he really had no regrets in his life. Wang Chong looked at his master, the evil emperor, in a daze. This was the first time he knew that there was such a reason behind his little sister's divine strength. Chapter 267. You really shouldn't waste such talent. Your Wang clan is a clan of ministers and generals. If you leave this lass with me, she might become an influential expert in your Wang clan in the future. The evil emperor said. Hee master, don't worry. However you want to teach her, just go ahead and do it. I will explain it to mother. Wang Chong said. Did he meet someone who could teach his little sister a lesson? Wang Chong wasn't going to be a good guy. His little sister wanted him to persuade his master, the evil emperor. But that was a completely different matter. It was already good enough that he didn't ask his master to add ingredients to her cultivation. The evil emperor nodded. Then, he looked at Wang Chong with a hint of worry in his eyes. I don't know if it's right or wrong for me to teach you the little yin-yang art. Your cultivation is too fast. I thought that since you aren't a member of a sect, your cultivation wouldn't be as fast. Who could have thought that it would be faster to cultivate in the military? This secret art might be powerful, but it has a fatal flaw. This is also the reason why I was assassinated by that traitorous disciple. Chong'er, you must remember that you can't be too hasty with the little Inyang art. If possible, you should slow down a little. Don't raise your cultivation too quickly to avoid future problems. Hehe, master, don't worry. I know what to do. Wang Chong chuckled inwardly. The reason why he was interested in the great Inyang heaven creation art was because it could raise his cultivation at the fastest speed. As for the other hidden dangers, if he could change the fate of the Tang dynasty and avert that calamity. So what if there were any hidden dangers? Master was thinking too much. The evil emperor didn't say anything. He could see the disdain in Wang Chong's eyes clearly, and he could only sigh. He was the one who imparted the little Inyang art to Wang Chong, so the latter was the source of everything. He could only think of a way to resolve the flaws in the little Inyang art and great Inyang heaven creation art. I hope that it will work. The demonic emperor old man said to himself as he glanced at the rosy sky. After living in a sect for so long, he was used to the kind of mutual deception, you attack me, suddenly entering the imperial court of the Tang dynasty and coming into contact with an ordinary secular family like the Wang family. The evil emperor suddenly felt his entire being relax. There was no mutual deceit. No one knew who he was. No one feared him like he was the evil emperor. No one feared him like a plague. There was only an ordinary life here. He taught a disciple with good aptitude to quietly cultivate in the depths of a spirit vein that no one knew about. He had to endure the sneak attacks of a teenage girl from time to time. At the same time, he scolded her a few times every day and ordered her to practice diligently. When he was free, he could even brew a cup of tea, eat a few pieces of braised beef sprinkled with sesame seeds, and drink a few mouthfuls of wine. His life was plain, and his heart was at peace. It was as if his entire being had relaxed. The evil emperor had truly fallen in love with this new lifestyle. As for these two disciples that he took in his later years, the evil emperor also liked them from the bottom of his heart. These two children were not scheming. Even though the little girl would sneak attack him from time to time, all she wanted was to leave the mountain. As for Wang Chong, the evil emperor could feel that there was something weighing heavily on his mind, but that was all there was to it. Towards the evil emperor, Wang Chong was definitely sincere and did not have the slightest bit of evil thoughts. This was something that the evil emperor could feel. This child had truly treated him as his master. To the evil emperor, who had lived a life of trials and tribulations, these were all precious. No matter what, the evil emperor did not want anything to happen to these two children. The evil emperor opened up his sleeves and quickly turned around to enter the main hall. Almost at the same time, Wang Chong looked around and quickly walked towards a man-made fake mountain at the edge of the mountain. How is it? Wang Chong asked. Gongzi. According to Gongzi, the construction of training ground number 2 has been completed. However, the living quarters and dining hall are still lacking. I'm afraid that it will take a few more months. Beside the fake mountain, a Wang family guard in his 30s who had been waiting for a long time reported. This person was called Su Ping. Just like Meng Long and the others, he had been a guard of the Wang family for more than a decade and was extremely reliable. Even though his martial arts couldn't be compared to Shen Hai and Meng Long, and he wasn't as agile, he was able to carry out tasks well. Everything that was assigned to him could be completed on time, meticulously and methodically. Training ground number 2 was a plan that Wang Chong had set up outside of the Spirit Vein base. The Spirit Vein that Wang Chong had found spanned from north to south and spanned a huge area. It would be a waste to use it as a training ground for the descendants of the various clans. Furthermore, there was no need for such a huge area. Thus, Wang Chong thought of the training ground number 2 plan. At the northernmost area of the Spirit Vein, a distance away from the base, he planned to open it to the outside world. In Wang Chong's plan, this training ground was just like the residence he had built on White Tiger Peak outside the Kunwa training ground. Both of them were extremely important. How many people can the living quarters of training ground number 2 currently hold? Wang Chong said as he gazed toward the north of the mountain range. Due to the forest, Wang Chong wasn't able to get a clear view of the surroundings. However, from afar, he could still make out a small cluster of eaves rising above the forest. Under the morning glow, it was dyed golden. That should be the training ground number 2, which was still under construction. It can hold around 30 to 40 people. Su Ping pondered for a moment, before replying with a stern expression. That's sufficient. By the time I return, training ground number 2 should be ready to open. Wang Chong smiled. If he were to make good use of this training ground number 2, not only would he be able to raise his influence, it would also be a huge treasure trove. Spirit veins. Moreover, it wasn't even a large spirit vein with an astonishing amount of vitality. Such a place would probably be a huge attraction to any big clan. If he were to make good use of this thing, it would probably become his second huge gold mountain, just like the Hyderabad ore. However, this matter still needed to be done step by step, and couldn't be rushed. After telling Su Ping about the future plans, Wang Chong pondered for a moment before turning around and walking toward the training ground on the other side of the base. At the side of the training ground, an old instructor in his 50s was supervising the training of the young men and women. His sideburns were white, and his face was stern, making him look very experienced. Young master. Seeing Wang Chong coming over, the old instructor quickly stopped and bowed slightly with a respectful expression. Young master. Almost at the same time, a group of young men and women who were training also noticed Wang Chong. All of them looked excited as they stopped their training and greeted Wang Chong. Their gazes were filled with fanaticism and joy as if they had seen their idol. Wang Chong greeted them with a smile. Continue your training. That simple sentence left everyone excited. Some of the young ladies even shrieked. Even though Wang Chong wasn't old, many of the things he had done weren't something that an ordinary person of his age could do. Thus, no one realized that Wang Chong wasn't much older than them. Elder Xiang, this way please. Wang Chong smiled. Under the fervent gazes of the crowd, he walked to the side with the old instructor. The old instructor's surname was Xiang, and he was recommended by Wang Chong's uncle and the other 8 instructors. Even though he wasn't the first to arrive at the base on the spirit vein, he had the highest prestige in the base, be it before or after. All of the Imperial Army instructors viewed him as their leader, and it wasn't easy to invite him over. All of the retired Imperial Army instructors respected him deeply. Before him, Wang Chong didn't dare to put on airs as the grandson of the 9th Gongzi. Instead, he addressed him as Elder Xiang. There are strict rules regarding the retirement of the Imperial Army, and it's impossible for us to agree to a request like Gongzi's. Besides, Gongzi has great ambitions. However, Duke Jiao is a person of high prestige, and he abides by his morals. This is something that everyone in the world has witnessed. On top of that, Gongzi has the heart to help the country, and you don't harbor any evil thoughts. That's why I agreed to your request. Elder Xiang said as he walked. There were many prestigious clans in the capital who wanted to invite him over, but he had never opened his mouth. The reason why he made an exception this time around was because he had a favorable impression of Wang Chong. The regional commander's incident caused Wang Chong to submit a petition to the Holy Emperor, and he was nearly sentenced to death in prison. Only someone with great courage would be able to do such a thing. Furthermore, he came from an upright faction, and everyone knew that he was on Duke Jiao's side. This was also the reason why he agreed to Elder Xiang's request. Elder Xiang, thank you for your favor. By opening this base in the spirit vein, I intend to lend the Empire a helping hand. Currently Uzun Turkic Khaganate, Goguryeo, Mengshi Zhao, and Abbasid Caliphate are no longer what they were in the past. However, not many people in the royal court know about it. The reason why Wang Chong is doing this is because he hopes that it will be of help to the Empire in the future. Wang Chong said. Wang Chong wouldn't say such words to other instructors. They wouldn't even ask about it. However, Elder Xiang was different. He had been an instructor in the Imperial Army for 27 years, and he had taught countless Imperial Army members. Many of the current Imperial Army instructors were his students. In the Imperial Army, His reputation, influence, standing, and rallying power were all extremely important. Furthermore, Elder Xiang had participated in several major battles of the empire, and he was acquainted with many influential officials in the royal court. As such, he was well versed in the various aspects of the empire. In the letter that little Uncle Wang Mi wrote to him, he emphasized that he had to treat Elder Xiang with sincerity, and that he couldn't hide anything from him. If he could win Elder Xiang's favor, as long as he summoned him, Wang Chong would be able to receive immeasurable help. Elder Xiang stopped in his tracks. He stared at Wang Chong with a pair of penetrating eyes, and after a moment, he finally nodded his head. He could see sincerity in Wang Chong's eyes. This was what Wang Chong said, and that was what he was thinking. It's a good thing that you think so. Like father, like son. You come from a clan of generals and ministers, and it's a blessing for the empire to be able to see through the hidden dangers of the empire. In the capital, there are members of the royal family, nobles, and influential clans. I've seen many of them. There are those who play chicken and fight with dogs, those who laze around and wait for death, those who fight with violence, and those who strive for fame. However, to be able to care for the empire and care for the world is truly commendable. There's no one in your generation who can match up to you. As long as you can maintain this sincerity, your future achievements will be limitless. I've already written several letters to invite some of my old friends and former students. I hope that they can lend you a helping hand. Elder Xiang's lips moved unhurriedly, but the contents of his words left Wang Chong overjoyed. Thank you, Elder Xiang. Wang Chong was delighted. Elder Xiang's old friends and students numbered in the hundreds, needless to say his students. At this moment, Wang Chong wasn't worried that there weren't enough Imperial Army instructors in the Spirit Vein base. Instead, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to accommodate them. Furthermore, if Elder Xiang were to write a letter and express his stance, the instructors of the Imperial Army would surely be able to make an immediate impact. At that time, Wang Chong would probably be able to gather a large number of men. Chapter 268. The students that you have recruited are still acceptable. However, if you intend to do something for the empire, I'm afraid that these 100 students won't be enough. Elder Xiang stopped and looked at Wang Chong. Elder Xiang, don't worry. These students are only the first batch. I will recruit more people in the future, and it won't just be limited to our Wang clan. Wang Chong said sincerely. Oh. Elder Xiang was surprised, but he was more impressed by the other party. So you already have a concrete plan in mind? That's great. I seem to have been worrying too much. After ending his conversation with Elder Xiang, Wang Chong quickly returned to the main hall. Time flew, and before he knew it, another 3 days had passed. By the side of the spirit vein, Wang Chong was seated cross-legged. His eyes were focused on his nose, and his nose was focused on his heart. His mind, spirit, and energy were circulating along his meridians and acupoints. The circulation of origin energy would absorb mental energy. Wang Chong hadn't noticed it at the start, but as he grew stronger and stronger, his origin energy would absorb more and more psychic energy, and this would become obvious. Thus, even though his origin energy was replenished, his mental energy would still be slightly fatigued. He would need to rest for a moment before he could recover. Wang Chong's mental energy was stronger than others. Even though he didn't feel fatigued immediately, he could already feel his mental energy being absorbed by his origin energy. Everything was dark, and he couldn't see anything. Wang Chong maintained his composure, not moving at all. After an unknown period of time, a ripple suddenly appeared in the darkness. Vaguely, Wang Chong sensed something in the surroundings. It's here. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind. Wang Chong wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling. Recently, Wang Chong had been experiencing it frequently. There seemed to be something in the darkness, but it wasn't a tree, a pavilion, a boulder, or a pond. It was something even more concrete and detailed. Something invisible to the naked eye. It was close, but it was also far away. It was separated by a thin layer of paper, but it was impossible to break through it. These are the rules, Wang Chong thought to himself. The power of heaven and earth was the rule, and the martial arts halo was the manifestation of the rule. Only by comprehending the rules of heaven and earth would one be able to possess a martial halo. Of all the true martial realm cultivators, Mayasame Ayaka didn't possess a martial halo, but Li Zhuxin did. Not all true martial realm martial artists would have a martial arts halo, and not everyone could have a martial arts halo just because they had enough strength. Under normal circumstances, in a situation where the combat level was about the same, the person with a martial arts halo would always be stronger than the person without. In order to possess a martial halo, one must first comprehend the rules, and before that, one must come into contact with the rules. Origin Energy Tier 9 was the beginning of everything. Only by coming into contact with the laws and sensing the existence of the laws would one be able to comprehend them. Otherwise, it would just be empty talk. Wang Chong was currently in this state. Time slowly passed, but Wang Chong did not try to break through the barrier. Instead, he allowed the origin energy to flow freely, allowing it to absorb his psychic energy as it flowed. All living things have their own nature. When one reached Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle and wanted to form a white ripple halo, the most important thing was to allow the flow of the Yuan Qi to flow naturally and allow the two to converge to the peak. If one were to forcefully do something, one would only end up with a waste of time. Some people might even go berserk because of this. When the absorption of origin energy reached its peak, when it could no longer absorb any more, a qualitative change occurred. With a loud rumble, Wang Chong's mental strength seemed to have broken through some kind of bottleneck, and he seemed to have comprehended something. In the next instant, the origin energy that was restricted to his dantian and meridians suddenly burst forth with a loud rumble, breaking through the limits of his body and gushing out from his pores. Boom! The space around Wang Chong trembled. If one were to look down from the sky, one would see a clear shockwave emanating from his body. When the shockwave reached its peak, it suddenly shrank and collapsed, forming a white ripple. As soon as the white ripple was formed, it felt as though it was made of steel, and it felt as though it was invincible. Boom! Around a zhang away from Wang Chong, a craggy black fake mountain was swept by the white ripple, and with a loud rumble, it exploded into smithereens. Fine dust rose up to a height of 1 zhang and filled the air. Success! In the midst of the shockwave, Wang Chong abruptly stood up, and a brilliant glint flashed across his eyes. From Origin Energy Tier 9 to Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle, the amount of origin energy he possessed didn't increase by too much, but the difference in prowess was like the difference between heaven and earth. Boom! Wang Chong abruptly punched out, and the origin energy in his body jolted. Then, a white ripple shot out from his fist, and at the very end of the origin energy, it seemed as though it was invisible. Boom! A massive wave was stirred up in the air. The might of Wang Chong's punch was as powerful as a tsunami. This is great! Wang Chong was exhilarated. The might of the barbaric god that he had cultivated after reaching Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle was on full display. In terms of pure might, Wang Chong's current strength was far above that of an Origin Energy Tier 9 cultivator. One move after another, Wang Chong executed the dragon bone art that he had learned back then, and every single time he executed it, a white ripple would appear around him. In fact, even when he kicked with his feet, a white ripple would appear, increasing the might of his moves by several fold. With a light kick, Wang Chong shattered a boulder. At this moment, Wang Chong was able to summon powerful white ripples from any part of his body. Let me try out the 100 Steps Divine Fist. Wang Chong looked around, and soon, his eyes fell on a large tree to the side, 200 zhang away with its thick foliage. Boom! A burst of fist chi wrapped in white ripples burst forth, and with a deafening explosion, the lush tree, as well as 5 to 6 trees in the surroundings, was blasted into smithereens by Wang Chong's 100 Steps Divine Fist. The hurricane hit the ground, scraping away the turf and stirring up the soil below, scattering it all over the sky. Is Origin Energy Tier 9 so formidable? A rustling voice sounded behind him. Turning around, Wang Chong realized that there was a group of people standing behind him. Those 100 young men and women were standing at the edge of the training ground, and they had already noticed the commotion. That doesn't seem to be the formidable Origin Energy Tier 9, but the 100 Steps Divine Fist. Impossible. I've seen the 100 Steps Divine Fist before, and it doesn't possess such might. The group of young men and women suddenly started arguing with one another. Looking at the group of young men and women, who were arguing with one another over him, Wang Chong chuckled. Before they could react, Wang Chong leaped down from the peak of the mountain and dashed into the distance. Back then, when he first entered the mountain, he estimated that it would take him 10 days to reach Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle and form the White Ripple Halo. Now that he had achieved his goal, it was about time for him to leave. So. In just a moment, Wang Chong disappeared from sight. Lad. Behind him, the evil emperor sipped on a mouthful of Mount Junshan snow butterfly tea as he watched Wang Chong disappear into the distance. A smile crept onto his lips, but soon his smile turned stern. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and cultivate. Humph. An indignant voice came from the window, and then everything was peaceful again. Gongzi. Outside the Spirit Vein base, 3 carriages were parked. The eagle, steel arms, and solitary wolf were standing outside, and 3 eagles were circling in the sky. Where's the location? Wang Chong nodded and asked. The Gogrian Tin Sun Tavern in the west of the city. As he spoke, Eagle passed an invitation card over. The invitation card was black, and on it were 2 large red words, invitation card. It was so bright that it seemed as though it was bleeding. Heh. As expected of a fierce dragon that doesn't cross the river. He sure is bold. Wang Chong shook his head. He took the invitation card from Eagle's hands and entered the carriage. Jaya! With a loud bellow and the sound of whips, the 3 carriages slowly moved toward the capital. There! The person whom Wang Chong had been waiting for a very long time had finally appeared. No one knew that a storm was brewing in the Tang dynasty. No one knew what this storm signified. It was only many years later that its effects were slowly revealed. In the west of the city, in the territory of the Gogurians, rows of lanterns hung on the streets, but their glow was dim. The encirclement against the Gogrian assassins and the death of King Sojuram had washed over this area like a storm. It had washed away the arrogance and conceit of the Gogurians, leaving them with a tinge of respect, fear, and apprehension. At this moment, Wang Chong was walking in the territory of the Gogurians. The once bustling territory of the Gogurians was now much more deserted, no longer as bustling as before. The Gogurians had attempted to assassinate the officials of the royal court, and they had even recruited 1,000 legitimate soldiers from Gogrian. If this matter were to be exposed, the Gogurians' business would be greatly affected. Most of the Gogrian shops were deserted. At the very least, this situation wouldn't change in the near future. Gongzi, I don't think this is a good idea. We have just annihilated the legitimate army of the Gogurians, and now that we are in their territory, they probably want us dead. Steel Arms said with a frown. To think that the influential Southern Protector General Zhangqiu Jinxiong would be invited to the capital in the territory of the Gogurians. After the incident with King Sojuram, everyone in the territory of the Gogurians knew about them. Privately, he had heard that the portraits of the few of them were in the possession of every Gogrian. So what about it? It's not that we are afraid of the Gogurians, but the Gogurians should be afraid of us. In the territory of the Tang dynasty, do we have to fear a few foreigners? Wang Chong puffed out his chest and said nonchalantly. He had already sensed the gazes peeking at him from the cracks of the doors, railings, and windows. But Wang Chong didn't mind it. The Gogurians should have taught them a lesson long ago. This was how the Gogurians should behave. As they chatted, the 4 soon arrived at a slightly bizarre, yet lavish establishment that was black and gold in color. Tin Sun Tavern. Wang Chong glanced at the words on the black signboard opposite him. On the signboard was an image of 10 suns. Chapter 269. Zhangqiu Jinxiong had entered the capital in a low-profile manner. It was only when Wang Chong received the news that the influential Anong Protector General had stealthily entered the capital. It was clear that Zhangqiu Jinxiong was determined to succeed in this trip to the capital. Let's enter. Wang Chong beckoned before stepping into the Tin Sun Tavern. The crimson Persian carpet was embroidered with images of blazing lava, and the two sides of the carpet were adorned with golden carvings. It wasn't gold but real gold. In this Gogrian tavern, one could see inlaid gems, agates, and luxurious wooden furniture made from ancient wood that was at least 1,000 years old. Black crystals could be seen all around the tavern. This Gogrian Tin Sun Tavern was truly extravagant. But of course the cost of living was also ridiculously high. Even the vast crane pavilion that the Yao clan privately operated paled in comparison to this tavern. Not even worth a mention. Unless one was a wealthy merchant or tycoon, it was impossible for them to afford such a price. However, Zhangqiu Jinxiong didn't lack money. Not only did the Anong Protector General receive a generous stipend, more importantly, Wang Chong knew that the other party wasn't one to restrain himself. Over the years of guarding Annan, Zhangqiu Jinxiong had earned quite a sum of money from the 6 Zhao of Arai. However, Wang Chong didn't mind it at all. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's hands were extremely clean. Even though he was vicious to outsiders, he had never extended his hands to internal affairs. He would only take what he should, and not take what he shouldn't. Even so, the royal court and the commoners turned a blind eye to the Anong Protector General's actions. In the Tin Sun Tavern, a figure was already waiting at the entrance of the staircase. He was dressed in a grayish-black casual robe with wide sleeves, and a golden red belt tied around his waist. He exuded a dignified aura. "Chong, you're here." Upon seeing Wang Chong, Wang Chong's big uncle's eyebrows relaxed, and he beckoned him over. "Big uncle." With a faint smile, Wang Chong hurried forward to meet him. After not seeing him for a period of time, his eldest uncle's complexion was rosy, and he looked even more spirited and dignified than before. After surviving several crises for the family, Wang Chong knew that his uncle was now riding the crest of success in the imperial court. Although his rank had not risen, his authority and status had increased significantly. That golden red belt was a gift from the Holy Emperor. Consort Taijin incident, and the regional commander's incident, had raised the prestige of the Wang clan significantly. Wang Chong was not a member of the imperial court, so it was impossible for him to benefit from it. Therefore, the biggest beneficiary of this matter was Wang Chong's uncle. The Wang clan was of the same root, and they were bound together for good or ill. Although he wasn't the one who benefited, Wang Chong was still genuinely happy. Now that grandfather has retired, Big Uncle has become the Wang clan's protective umbrella in the royal court. Wang Chong couldn't participate in the court's politics, so he could only help his uncle in this way. "You must have waited for a long time." Wang Chong walked over with a friendly look on his face. It's all right. I've only been here for a while." Upon seeing Wang Chong walk over, Wang Jin's stern gaze softened significantly. With a smile, he looked at Wang Chong with the concern and doting of an elder looking at a junior. This kind of closeness was unimaginable to him in his previous life. This was what Wang Chong was most proud of, and what he was most proud of. Wang Chong very much enjoyed this sort of harmonious relationship between a junior and a senior that was devoid of scheming. "You should have received Zhangqiu Jinxiong's invitation, right?" Wang Jin looked at Wang Chong and said with his hands behind his back, I'm surprised. To think that the Southern Protector General would invite me over." There was no need for Wang Chong to hide anything from his big uncle. Wang Chong was indeed surprised to receive Zhangqiu Jinxiong's invitation. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was the revered Southern Protector General, an existence on the same level as Fomen Linta, Gao Xianji, Geshu Han, and Wang Shougui. He was a colossal crocodile in the empire's military. On the other hand, Wang Chong was a nameless nobody. He didn't even hold a single official position. Even a squad leader in the military had a higher rank than him. The difference in their statuses was like the distance between heaven and earth. One was in the sky while the other was on the ground. That was why Wang Chong found it strange. There's no need for you to belittle me. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's trip to the capital this time around has contributed greatly. Besides, as a descendant of the Wang clan, who would dare to look down on you? Wang Zhen harumphed coldly. There was an intimidating aura in his eyes. Wang Chong was currently the Qilin son of the Wang clan, the most outstanding, promising disciple of the Wang clan's younger generation. Anyone who dared to look down on Wang Chong would be looking down on the entire Wang clan. Hee. Wang Chong chuckled as he felt warmth in his heart. Even though Big Uncle didn't say it directly, Wang Chong could still sense the protective tone in his words. Right, Big Uncle, is Little Uncle not here? Wang Chong asked. Since Zhangqiu Jinxiong was intending to rope in the Wang clan, there was no reason for him to let Little Uncle off. After all, even though Little Uncle wasn't in the capital, he wasn't too far away from here. I told him not to come, Wang Jin replied. Ah, Wang Chong looked at his big uncle in surprise. It's not appropriate for our Wang clan to get involved too deeply. The two of us are more than enough. There's no need for Little Uncle to enter, Wang Jin said seriously. Wang Jin sternly said as he stared deeply at Wang Chong. Big Uncle, please enlighten me. Understanding, Wang Chong put away his smile and sternly bowed to ask for guidance. Clearly, his big uncle wasn't waiting for him, just to catch up with his nephew, but to teach him. Even though Wang Chong had 2 lifetimes of experience under his belt, he would never underestimate his big uncle, nor would he think too highly of himself. His big uncle had spent his entire life dealing with politics, and in this aspect, he was far more experienced than Wang Chong. Zhangqiu Jinxiong is a man of great ambition and resolution. We can't afford to offend such a person, but there's no way he will side with us just because we helped him. A person like him will never side with any faction. He is a faction on his own, Wang Chong's big uncle said. Wang Chong's big uncle said. An invisible ripple shrouded the surroundings, shrouding the conversation between Wang Chong and Wang. General Wang Chong was taken aback. He knew the course of history, so he knew that Zhangqiu Jinxiong was indeed a man of great ambition. His desire for power was boundless, and it was impossible for him to side with any faction. But Big Uncle, Wang Chong recalled that not too long ago, his big uncle had sought him out for guidance due to his lack of understanding of Zhangqiu Jinxiong. But now, with his decades of experience in the royal court and politics, he was actually able to accurately grasp Zhangqiu Jinxiong's personality. Through this, he was able to deduce how to treat Zhangqiu Jinxiong and dissuade his little uncle from doing so. In that life, Wang Chong only remembered his big uncle's harsh, inflexible, strict, and unreasonable attitude toward him. He also remembered that his big uncle's misjudgment had caused the Wang clan to fall into an abyss of despair. But this time, Wang Chong had a deep impression of his big uncle. I understand, Wang Chong said. During the banquet later, you mustn't offend Zhangqiu Jinxiong, but you mustn't get too close to him either. Zhangqiu Jinxiong is different from Yang Zhao. Yang Zhao might not understand this, but Zhangqiu Jinxiong does. So you must treat him differently, Wang Jin said solemnly. He had high hopes for this nephew of his, and he didn't wish for anything to happen to him before he stepped into the political arena. This was especially so for a protector general like Zhangqiu Jinxiong. Big Uncle has met Zhangqiu Jinxiong? Wang Chong suddenly asked, not answering the question. Wang Jin was surprised, but he quickly nodded. I saw him from afar in the tavern when he entered the city. Wang Chong nodded. There were some things that didn't need to be explained too clearly. At this point, Wang Jin already understood the situation. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was still waiting inside, so it wasn't wise for the two of them to stay outside for too long. Understanding his big uncle's intentions, Wang Chong knew what he had to do. After chatting for a moment, the two of them walked up the stairs. Even though the streets of the Gogurians were cold and deserted, the Tin Sun Tavern was bustling with activity. The first thing Wang Chong saw was a group of black-armored generals on the second floor, drinking and playing rock-paper-scissors merrily. They should be the generals that Zhangqiu Jinxiong brought over from Annan, Wang Chong thought. These generals were slightly different from those in the north, and they carried the unique traits of the people from Jiannan. Since Zhangqiu Jinxiong had decided to enter the capital, it was impossible for him to be alone. At the very least, he could trust some trustworthy generals. Other than the generals that Zhangqiu Jinxiong had brought over from Jiannan, There were also many Gogrian men and women on the second floor. Upon seeing Wang Chong's group, they immediately turned to look at them hatefully. Humph! Wang Chong harumphed coldly before heading up to the third floor together with big uncle Wang Zhen. Ha ha ha, Jiexin, you're here. Before he could reach the third floor, a loud laugh rang out, and he was one step ahead of him, taking the initiative to climb up the stairs. Even before Wang Chong could see the person, he had already heard the other party's voice. That person should be Zhangqiu Jinxiong, Wang Chong thought. Unlike the second floor, even though the atmosphere on the third floor was lively, it was much quieter. Upon seeing big uncle Wang Zhen, a muscular man with a powerful aura stood up from the floor. Wang Chong had never met Zhangqiu Jinxiong before, but upon reaching the third floor, Wang Chong could immediately tell who the real Zhangqiu Jinxiong was. On the left side of the hall on the third floor, close to a three-legged gold crow sculpture on the wall, a strong bearded man with extremely broad shoulders, a dragon waist and a tiger back stood up from the ground. It was just a simple movement, but it was as if a mountain had risen from the ground, emitting an aura that seemed capable of shattering the heavens and rending the earth. In his previous life, Wang Chong wasn't qualified to meet these influential protector generals of the Tang dynasty. This was the first time he was meeting Zhangqiu Jinxiong. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's aura was powerful, far surpassing that of anyone Wang Chong had met so far. More importantly, his aura was as firm as a mountain, carrying with it the unique traits of a soldier. Anyone who saw him would know at first glance that he was definitely not a general, but a commander. But what attracted Wang Chong the most was his eyes. They were a pair of eyes brimming with ambition, and he didn't bother concealing it at all. Zhangqiu Jinxiong. Chapter 270. Minister of War. The position that Zhangqiu Jinxiong was intending to take on was an extremely important one. No matter which faction it was impossible to bypass the orders of the Minister of War. Unlike the previous Minister of War, Zhangqiu Jinxiong was currently at the prime of his life, brimming with ambition. If he were to become the Minister of War, he would never allow himself to be a puppet that others could manipulate. This was also the reason why Zhangqiu Jinxiong's decision in the royal court had dragged on for so long. Even Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen had only agreed to it after hearing that Zhangqiu Jinxiong's appointment was inevitable. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was a true outsider. His appearance would throw the entire royal court into chaos, forcefully throwing an uncontrollable variable into the mix. This was precisely what the bigwigs of the royal court feared. It was no small matter for the Southern Protector General to become the Minister of War. These thoughts flashed across Wang Chong's mind, but he soon regained his composure and stood quietly beside big uncle Wang Zhen. Brother Zhangqiu, I have kept you waiting. Please. At the same time, Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen also extended his hand to welcome Zhangqiu Jinxiong. In the entire Wang clan, there was only one person who could stand on the same level as the Southern Protector General. Wang General. The only difference was that Zhangqiu Jinxiong was a military official, while Wang Zhen was a civil official. Even though they were in different fields, Wang Zhen's experience in the royal court was in no way inferior to Zhangqiu Jinxiong. In fact, due to the fact that the Wang clan was a clan of ministers and generals, they were able to participate in the political discussions of the royal court and decide Zhangqiu Jinxiong's promotion. This was also the reason why Zhangqiu Jinxiong had always wanted to enter the royal court. Haha, you must be the famous Qilin son of the Wang clan, Wang Chong. After exchanging pleasantries with Wang Zhen, Zhangqiu Jinxiong didn't take a seat. Instead, he turned to look at Wang Chong, who had retracted his aura. Lord, you flatter me. I am indeed Wang Chong. Regarding the matter of the regional commanders, I still have to thank my lord for your help. Since Zhangqiu Jinxiong had taken the initiative to pay attention to him, Wang Chong didn't bother hiding anymore. He stepped out from his big uncle's side and bowed respectfully. Haha, there's no need to thank me. Zhangqiu Jinxiong waved his hands casually. I'm helping you out of righteousness and national affairs, so you don't have to think too much about it. On the other hand, young Master Wang has such foresight and magnanimity at such a young age. It is truly commendable that he is able to worry about the affairs of the country. Your future achievements will definitely be limitless. He had noticed Wang Chong the moment he stepped onto the stairs. Perhaps Wang Chong himself thought that as long as he kept a low profile, he would not attract attention. But this was basically impossible. One of the reasons why he invited the Wang clan to the Tin Sun Tavern was to meet the influential figure of the Wang clan, Wang Gunja. The other reason was to meet the Qilin son of the Wang clan, who had caused a huge uproar in the Gogrian Tin Sun Tavern. When it's time to restrain oneself, when it's time to stand out, when it's time to stand out, when it's time to speak, when it's time to speak, when it's time to act, when it's time to speak, when it's time to act, 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 when it's time to act. When it was said that with Wang Jiuling's death, the Wang clan would surely decline. But from the looks of it, that might not be the case. I'm afraid that the fortune of the Wang clan will continue for another generation. Countless thoughts flashed through Zhangqiu Jinxiong's mind, and in the blink of an eye, he had an accurate assessment of the Wang clan. Duke Jiu was already old, and Wang Zhen had reached the end of his career in the royal court. The future of the Wang clan still rested on the younger generation of the third generation. And of all the descendants of the Wang clan, Wang Chong was Zhangqiu Jinxiong. To be able to enter the royal palace to meet the emperor at such a young age, and survive even after being sent to the imperial prison, Wang Chong's grace was truly astounding. Be it Wang Zhen back then or the young Zhangqiu Jinxiong, neither of them had ever received such grace. If nothing unexpected happened, this person would surely become an influential figure in the royal court in the future. With a rough gauge of the Wang clan's pulse, Zhangqiu Jinxiong knew what he should do in the capital. Ha ha ha! At this moment, a burst of laughter suddenly sounded, drawing everyone's attention. Wang Chong turned around and saw a figure pushing open the door of another suite on the third floor, and walking out, at the perfect moment. This person was dressed in a white robe and a black scarf. His demeanor was reminiscent of a scholarly official. Yang Zhao. Wang Chong's eyes blinked as he recognized that figure, and he immediately understood what was going on. Yang Zhao had clearly arrived long ago, but he chose to stay in a suite by the side. It was only after Wang Chong and his big uncle appeared, and met with Zhangqiu Jinxiong, that he made use of this opportunity to butt in. Clearly, this was the result of Zhangqiu Jinxiong and Yang Zhao's arrangement. Lord Zhangqiu, how is it? Am I right? Yang Zhao laughed heartily. Hee, not bad, not bad. Wang Gongzi is a young hero, a dragon among men. How can your background be lacking? Zhangqiu Jinxiong said with a smile. The way Zhangqiu Jinxiong spoke to Yang Zhao was much more amicable and amiable, as though they were brothers. With a single glance, one could tell that his relationship with Yang Zhao wasn't ordinary. Ha ha ha, we're all family. Come, Lord Wang, this way please. Yang Zhao laughed heartily as he walked over with his head held high. Raising his right hand, he invited Wang Zhen to take a seat on behalf of Zhangqiu Jinxiong. On the other hand, Zhangqiu Jinxiong simply smiled, not minding the gesture at all. What's going on? Wang Zhen saw all of this, and his eyebrows shot up in astonishment. He knew of the relationship between Yang Zhao and Zhangqiu Jinxiong, but from the looks of it, the relationship between the two seemed to be even more intimate than what he had imagined. On the other hand, Wang Chong was well aware of the matter, so he wasn't surprised at all. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was the financial backer behind Yang Zhao. Back then, before consort Tai Zhen ascended to the throne, everything had yet to be decided. Back then, Zhangqiu Jinxiong supported Yang Zhao in Annan, giving him a huge sum of money and sending him to the capital. One must know that back then, Yang Zhao was just a lowly scoundrel who was addicted to gambling. In name, he was only consort Tai Zhen's cousin. However, there was no guarantee that he would succeed. Under such circumstances, Zhangqiu Jinxiong still dared to invest a huge sum in Yang Zhao and treat him with respect. From this, it could be seen how daring he was. However, Zhangqiu Jinxiong probably didn't expect that Yang Zhao would lose all the money he had given him the moment he arrived in the capital, and eventually, he met Wang General now that consort Taizhen had ascended to the throne, and Yang Zhao had returned the favor. It went without saying that the two of them were on good terms. Wang Chong wasn't too surprised to learn of this relationship. On the other hand, Yang Zhao was winking at him as a signal, causing Wang Chong to chuckle inside. Please. On the other hand, Wang Zhen didn't think too much into it. He stretched out his right hand and gestured for the host and guests to take their seats. The Gogurians' chairs were exquisite, and for the sake of earning money, they were extravagant. As soon as Wang Chong sat down, he began surveying the surroundings. Zhangqiu Jinxiong didn't just invite the Wang clan's uncle and nephew to this banquet. There were quite a few other guests on the third floor as well. Most of them were Zhangqiu Jinxiong's subordinates, and the rest were probably his own men in the capital. Having been the Southern Protector General for so many years, it was impossible for Zhangqiu Jinxiong to not have any spies in the royal court. I wonder which of these people is Xin Yu Zhongtong? Which one is Zhang Wentua? Wang Chong thought. The men that Zhangqiu Jinxiong brought this time were all tall and well-built, and they exuded a powerful killing intent. With a single look, it was clear that they were important generals in the military. Of these people, there were only two that Wang Chong was concerned about. One was Xin Yu Zhongtong, and the other was Zhang Wentua. To Wang Chong, these two people held extraordinary significance. Just that, even though Wang Chong knew their names, he had never met either of them before. Logically speaking, Zhangqiu Jinxiong should have brought his closest kin with him. But even Wang Chong wasn't confident that he would be able to do so. Logically speaking, he should have been able to tell from the seating arrangement. However, the one on Zhangqiu Jinxiong's left was Yang Zhao, and on his right was a sharp-looking man with a mustache. He seemed more like a military advisor than a soldier. Thus, Wang Chong was unable to determine which one was Xin Yu Zhongtong, and which one was Zhang Wentua. Or perhaps they weren't here at all? Innkeeper, serve the dishes. Zhangqiu Jinxiong sat down, and with a wave of his hand, he beckoned for the innkeeper to serve the dishes. The Southern Protector General had the air of a military officer around him, and his every action was straightforward and magnanimous. On the other side, even though the Gogurians were feeling a little awkward, upon receiving the signal, they quickly got busy. A few exquisite appetizers were immediately served. A plate of jade capital crispy fish, a plate of shishi tongue and sauce, a plate of grade 5 dragon phoenix exuberance, and a plate of jadeite consort chicken. At the center of the banquet was a crispy roasted suckling pig, and the atmosphere of the banquet was immediately livened up. Even though he didn't have a good impression of the Gogurians, Wang Chong had to admit that they had put in a lot of effort into this tavern. The appearance, aroma, and taste of these dishes were perfect, and it was clear that they would be able to whet one's appetite with a single look. They were far superior to the dishes of the vast crane pavilion. I heard that the Gogurians worship the three-legged golden crow, and it's a symbol of extreme yang. Thus they built this 10-sun tavern. Since Zhangqiu Jinxiong has entered the capital today, I borrowed these 10 days to host this banquet for everyone. I hope that everyone will enjoy themselves to the fullest today. Zhangqiu Jinxiong said. General, you're being too polite. The crowd hurriedly replied. In the entire tavern, the only one who could stand on equal footing with Zhangqiu Jinxiong was Big Uncle Wang General. How could anyone else dare to accept his words? Haha, there's no need to stand on ceremony. Jiexin, I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time back in the capital, and I've always wanted to have a chat with you. However, it's a pity that I've never had the chance to do so. Now, I'm finally able to fulfill my wish. Brother Zhangqiu, you're being too polite. Brother Zhangqiu, you'll have plenty of opportunities to do so in the future. Wang Zhen replied respectfully, a rare sight to behold. Such was the way of the bureaucracy. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was a general in the past, but once he became the Minister of War, he would no longer be the same. The two of them would have many opportunities to interact in the future. I'll be counting on your auspicious words then. Hearing those words, Zhangqiu Jinxiong's eyes lit up, and his mood lifted. Come, let's toast to your auspicious words. Chapter 271. After drinking a cup of wine, the relationship between the two sides immediately became much more harmonious. This was the first time Wang Chong was meeting Zhangqiu Jinxiong, but big uncle Wang Jin was different. Although the two of them rarely interacted with each other, they were of the same generation and had long heard of each other's stories. In fact, Zhangqiu Jinxiong even knew that Wang Jin's character was Jie Xian. On the other hand, Wang Jin didn't address the other party as Great General or Protector General, but as Brother Zhangqiu. Both of them were of the same generation. Brother Jiexin, Zhangqiu Jinxiong put down his cup and said sincerely, in front of Brother Jiexin, there is no need for me to hide anything. After living by the borders for several decades, Zhangqiu also wished to move to another place. There are many prestigious clans in the capital, and Brother Jiexin is an influential official in the royal court. Zhangqiu hopes that he can sit in the selection for the Minister of War, and he hopes that Brother Wang can give him some pointers. Zhangqiu will be eternally grateful. Those words immediately silenced the entire third floor. All eyes turned to Wang Chong's big uncle. Soldiers tended to get straight to the point. Even though Zhangqiu Jinxiong was ambitious, he was no exception. One of the goals of this banquet was to befriend Wang Zhen and establish a connection with the Wang clan. However, what Zhangqiu Jinxiong was most concerned about was the matter regarding the Minister of War. Brother Zhangqiu is exaggerating. Wang Zhen stroked his beard with a contemplative expression. He wasn't surprised by Zhangqiu Jinxiong's question at all. Wang Zhen had already expected Zhangqiu Jinxiong to ask such a question. Brother Zhangqiu has made great contributions to the Tang dynasty by stabilizing Jiannan. With such qualifications, you are more than qualified to enter the Bureau of Military Personnel. Based on my experience, Brother Zhangqiu only has a 40% chance of entering the central court. 40%. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's eyes flickered with disappointment. Even with a 40% chance, it was still not enough to enter the middle garden. This wasn't what Zhangqiu Jinxiong wanted to hear. But he also knew that Wang Zhen was an influential official of the royal court. There was no way he would lie to him on such matters. This was also the reason why he treated Wang Zhen with such respect. Only 40%. Could Brother Jiexin please advise me on what to do in the future? Zhangqiu will definitely repay you in the future, Zhangqiu Jinxiong said earnestly. This Zhangqiu Jinxiong's thoughts are more urgent than I thought. Wang Chong looked on coldly and thought to himself. An existence of Zhangqiu Jinxiong's level was a man of his word. Since he had made such a promise, he would definitely fulfill it in the future. Such words could have been spoken in private, but Zhang Xian could see how anxious Zhangqiu Jinxiong was. Perhaps he had waited for too long, or perhaps he knew that this was his last chance. Wang Chong could sense that Zhangqiu Jinxiong was already willing to go all out for the position of Minister of War. To think that I was still thinking that there might be a slim chance of keeping Zhangqiu Jinxiong in Jiannan, but it seems like it's impossible now. Wang Chong thought to himself. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was the guardian of the southeast of the empire, and a large part of what happened in the future was due to the iron-willed Protector General Zhangqiu Jinxiong leaving Jiannan to take over the central court. Without a powerful figure like Zhangqiu Jinxiong to suppress him, Jiannan would be left empty, and powerful foes like Mengxi Zhao and Uzun would have to deal with. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's transfer to the central court was a blessing for him, but the departure of Uzun and Mengxi Zhao gave them an opportunity to strike. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was a powerful commander in the military, but his ambition for power was his greatest weakness. Even so, there was nothing Wang Chong could do about it. People strive for higher places and water flows to lower places. This is human nature. Zhangqiu Jinxiong had already made up his mind to leave Jiannan, and there was nothing Wang Chong could do about it. Wang Chong could only sigh. Brother Zhangqiu, it's best for you to keep a low profile this time around, Wang Zhen said as he stroked his beard. Wang Zhen stroked his beard. His face remained impassive, but his eyes shone with the wisdom of politics. Brother Zhangqiu, do you know where the greatest obstacle to your advancement comes from? Qingqi, the Yao clan? Zhangqiu Jinxiong probed. He had already communicated with the two clans, and regardless of whether it was the Yao clan or Qingqi, they had expressed their support for his ascension to the central court. If Wang Jin were to say that it was Qingqi and the Yao clan, he would never have believed it. But that was precisely where the problem lay. There was no one who objected to his ascension to the capital, but the matter had yet to be settled. That's not it. How could it be them? Wang Jin chuckled as he picked up the wine cup on the table and took a sip. It's Fomin Linta, Gao Xinji, Geshu Han, and the other generals in the army, including the Anong Protector General Zhang Shougui. Upon hearing this answer, Zhangqiu Jinxiong and his subordinates from Jiannan were taken aback. Even Wang Chong was taken aback. He had only heard of the happenings in the royal court, but he didn't pay much attention to it. The matter regarding Zhangqiu Jinxiong had indeed dragged on for quite some time. In Wang Chong's opinion, it was likely that the various powers in the royal court were unwilling to allow an outsider like Zhangqiu Jinxiong to enter the capital. But Big Uncle Wang Zhen's words provided another explanation. Although Wang Chong was surprised at first, he quickly understood what was going on after some thought. Brother Zhangqiu, think about it. They are all protector generals and great generals of the Tang dynasty. But in terms of aptitude, Fomin Linta, Gao Xinji, Geshu Han, and Zhang Shougui have all contributed greatly to the Tang dynasty. If Brother Zhangqiu can ascend to the central court, doesn't that mean that Fomin Linta and the others can do the same? Wang Zhen stroked his beard. The affairs of the royal court weren't as black and white as they could be. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was a formidable commander, but it wasn't that Wang Zhen was underestimating him. Zhangqiu Jinxiong had never come into contact with the royal court before. He was truly an amateur when it came to such matters. The opposition to Zhangqiu Jinxiong's entry into the capital didn't just come from the prestigious clans and nobles in the capital, but from the military as well. How dare they? Zhangqiu Jinxiong's complexion immediately turned awful. He was only trying his luck in the first place, and he didn't really expect to get anything out of it. But now that he heard about the connections in the royal court, his face darkened. If it was just the opposition from the capital, he could just walk around with his status as the Southern Protector General, and everyone would have to give him some face. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was confident that he could persuade them. The advantage of not coming into contact with the royal court for a long time was that he had never offended anyone in the royal court. But if the opposition came from the military, from the likes of the Western Protector General, Qixi Protector General, and Big Dipper Army Commander Geshu Han, then it would be impossible for him to ascend to the central court. In terms of experience and contributions, these people didn't pale in comparison to him at all. Before Wang Zhen, Yao Guangyi, and the others, he could still talk about his contributions, but before the likes of Fomin Linta, there was really nothing he could say. Furthermore, due to the long period of peace in Jiannan, in some aspects, Zhangqiu Jinxiong was even inferior to them. Lord Wang, is there really no other way? Yang Zhao asked anxiously. This time, even he couldn't sit still anymore. Even though these were just Wang Zhen's words, Yang Zhao could immediately tell that there was a high chance that it was the truth of the matter. He had been in the capital for quite some time now, and he had befriended quite a number of officials. Initially, he thought that he was quite familiar with the royal court and the capital of the Tang dynasty. But at this moment, he realized that he still knew nothing about the royal court. Fomin Linta and Gao Xinji have been in the Tang dynasty for many years, and they have connections in the royal court. However, if it's just these few, there's no need for Brother Zhangqiu to worry too much. After all, these few have fatal flaws, and it's impossible for them to compete with Brother Zhangqiu. In the several centuries of history of the Tang dynasty, there has never been a minister of war. Not just the Tang dynasty, there hasn't been one in all of the previous dynasties. The one Brother Zhangqiu should worry about is still the Eastern Protector General, Zhang Shougui. Wang Zhen said. Wang. Before the others could react, Zhangqiu Jinxiong and the middle-aged strategist beside him were taken aback, and their faces warped in astonishment. Just like brother Zhangqiu, Zhang Shogui is a Han, and he's a protector general of the empire. On top of that, he leads an army to suppress the Goguryeo Empire, Khitans, Shi, and the Eastern Turkic Khaganate. His methods are similar to brother Zhangqiu's, perhaps even more domineering. If brother Zhangqiu wishes to enter the royal court, he is the one you need to worry about, Wang Jin said slowly. Wang Chong stood on the side, a pensive look on his face. This was the first time he had come into contact with such a major matter, and it involved almost all of the powers in the capital. It could be said that Zhangqiu Jinxiong had experienced the most complicated side of the royal court through this promotion. Politics had always been his weakness, and Wang Chong knew that he wouldn't be able to interfere in this matter. Thus, he chose to watch silently from the sidelines, treating this as his best political lesson. Brother Shogui, your ambitions don't lie here, right? Zhangqiu Jinxiong asked with a grim expression. The name of the Eastern Protector General, Zhang Shogui, was like the shadow of a mountain cast upon him. In the military, the two of them were the titans of the world, one in the east while the other in the south, and they rarely interacted with one another. But Zhangqiu Jinxiong knew that Zhang Shogui's qualifications were far greater than his. Most of Zhangqiu Jinxiong's contributions were in Annam, but Zhang Shogui was different. From the Uzun to the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganate, to Goguryeo and Khitans, he had displayed exceptional aptitude from a young age. And unlike him, Zhang Shogui had once had a chance to become the prime minister of the Tang dynasty. Even though the other party wasn't much older than him, he was far more experienced than the Southern Protector General. Even veterans like Fomin Linta and Gao Xianji were wary of him. If Zhang Shogui were to vie for the position of Minister of War, he would be a formidable foe. The only thing that made Zhangqiu Jinxiong feel at ease was that Zhang Shogui's ambition was to become the prime minister. In this aspect, Zhang Shogui's goal was much higher than his. It's true that Zhang Shogui's ambition is to become the prime minister. But brother Zhangqiu, have you ever thought about what will happen to them if you become the minister of war? In an instant, the entire pavilion fell silent. The eyebrows of the strategist beside Zhangqiu Jinxiong slowly creased. He understood the meaning behind Wang Zhen's words. The reason why Zhangqiu Jinxiong's ascension to the throne was not just because of the royal court, but also because of the borders. If Zhangqiu Jinxiong were to settle down in a corner, it would still be fine. But if he were to become the minister of war, it would mean that Zhang Shogui, Gao Xianji, Fomin Linta, Geshu Han, and the others would be under his control. Thus, even if their ambitions weren't to become the minister of war, they would never allow Zhangqiu Jinxiong to become the new minister of war. In terms of interests, these people were aligned. Chapter 272. Xinyu Zhongtong. The matters in the royal court were already more than enough to deal with. If he were to face opposition from the military as well, his promotion to the Minister of War would be in vain. May I know if Brother Jiexin has any plans in mind? Zhangqiu Jinxiong asked. Hehe, even though this isn't an easy matter, it isn't entirely hopeless. 10% is with King Qi, 10% is with the Prime Minister, and 40% is with His Majesty. If Brother Zhangqiu can convince His Majesty, this matter will be in the bag. However, before that, it would be best for Brother Zhangqiu not to agitate Fomin Linta, Gao Xianji, and Zhang Shogui. Otherwise, this matter might blow up again. As long as the matter is settled, Brother Zhangqiu will be able to rest easy. Wang Jin smiled. This was as much as he could offer Zhangqiu Jinxiong. The rest would be up to him. After all, he was the one who was going to be promoted. If even he wasn't determined, no one else would be able to help him. Haha, I understand. Thank you for your guidance, Brother Jiexin. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's eyes lit up, and his furrowed brows smoothed out. He was worried about everything, except the 40% that the Holy Emperor would have. 40% from the Saint King and 40% from his own experience meant that there was an 80% chance of success. There was a good 50% chance that he would succeed. With such thoughts in mind, Zhangqiu Jinxiong shot a glance at Yang Zhao, and the two of them exchanged glances. The heart of a monarch was hard to fathom, and persuading the Holy Emperor would be the most difficult. However, it was actually the easiest for Zhangqiu Jinxiong. The current Holy Emperor was truly doting on Consort Taizhen. In fact, for the sake of Consort Taizhen, he nearly made an enemy out of the entire royal court. As long as Consort Taizhen made a move, the 40% that the Holy Emperor would get wouldn't be a problem at all. Brother Zhangqiu wishes to enter the capital. How are the arrangements in Annan coming along? With the promotion of a protector general, the borders will be empty, and the handover is no small matter. Brother Zhangqiu can go all out on the front lines, but we mustn't allow anything to go wrong in the rear. Wang Zhen said. The transfer of power at the border was often overlooked, but it was a very important matter. If anything were to happen, Zhangqiu Jinxiong would lose his position as the Minister of War. No matter who pleaded for him, it was useless. Even Consort Taizhen might not be able to do it. Military affairs were no trifling matter. As long as Zhangqiu Jinxiong wasn't the Minister of War yet, he would have to take responsibility for it. Ha ha ha. I have brought the candidate for the next Southern Protector General. Zhong Tong, stand up and greet Lord Wang. Zhangqiu Jinxiong suddenly turned to a muscular, dark-skinned man on his left and said, "Ah, sir." When his name was called, the tall and sturdy black-faced man quickly stood up from his seat. He was a little flustered. This was clearly the first time he had participated in such a gathering. Lord Wang, I am Xinyu Zhongtong. Greetings, Lord Wang. Buzz. As though a massive boulder had fallen on his heart, Wang Chong's body trembled violently. He abruptly turned his head over. So, he's Xinyu Zhongtong. Wang Chong stared at the figure before him, as waves of emotions surged in his heart. Other than Zhangqiu Jinxiong, there were two other people whom Wang Chong wanted to meet the most. One of them was Xinyu Zhongtong, and the other was Zhang Wentua. Wang Chong thought that Xinyu Zhongtong wouldn't be around, but who could have thought that the man who had been drinking with his head lowered would actually be the future Southern Protector General, Xinyu Zhongtong. Wang Chong carefully examined this future Protector General. The general had a dark face and a thick chest, and he had a thick military style, but his expression was wooden and lacking in flexibility. He did not have the air of a great general that Wang Chong had imagined. Is this the successor that Zhangqiu Jinxiong has chosen for himself? Wang Chong shook his head. Every single one of the great generals and protector generals of the Tang dynasty was an outstanding individual. Every single one of these people could take charge of an area on their own, and they could even lead an army on a punitive expedition. But in Xinyu Zhongtong, Wang Chong couldn't see any of this. Putting aside the fact that this Xinyu Zhongtong couldn't compare up to the likes of Fomin Linta, Ge Han, Gao Xianji, and Zhang Shogui, he couldn't even compare up to Yao Guangyi. At the very least, Yao Guangyi was much more formidable in terms of strategizing and planning than this man before him. Haha, Zhongtong's surname is Xiang, but after being an official for so long, everyone has gotten used to calling him Xinyu Zhongtong, forgetting about his real name. In Southern, Zhongtong is a veteran who has served under me for many years. Of course, Zhongtong's capability isn't comparable to protector generals like Zhang Shogui and Fomin Linta, but he's a defensive general. I've rehearsed it before, and even if I were to lead the army and launch an all-out assault, it would still be difficult for us to defeat them. After my departure, Zhongtong will be more than sufficient to take over my position. Southern hasn't been in a war for more than a decade now, so what we need isn't offense but defense. Given Zhongtong's capability, regardless of whether it's Uzin's assault or the changes in Irai, he will be more than sufficient to fend them off. Zhangqiu Jinxiong patted Xinyu Zhongtong's shoulder with a gleeful expression. Annan had the 180,000 elites that he had left behind. In addition to Xinyu Zhongtong, a veteran general who was capable of defending the city, even if he were to leave, the city would still be as stable as an impregnable fortress. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was very satisfied with the affairs after his departure, as well as the candidate for the position of Protector General. What Annan needed wasn't an aggressive general, but a defensive general. The more an enterprising person did, the more flaws they would easily reveal. On top of that, an aggressive general would also be ambitious. They wouldn't be content with a single area, and they would be difficult to control. On the other hand, a true defensive general would be able to guard his legacy and loyally carry out the strategies he had left behind when he was still in power. Wang Chong looked on coldly from the side, and the worry in his heart grew heavier. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was the true commander of the empire, the Southern Protector General. He possessed outstanding military capabilities. His choice of Xinyu Zhongtong as his successor wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. But this was precisely what Wang Chong was worried about. Zhangqiu Jinxiong only thought that Xinyu Zhongtong was a defensive general, and he was more than capable of guarding the legacy he had left behind. But perhaps, not even he could have imagined that there would come a day when Xinyu Zhongtong would have to leave the territory that he knew like the back of his hand and go on the offensive. From a defensive general, he would become a defensive general. If a person who was only skilled in defense were to go on the offensive, the outcome would be obvious. There's no need to stand on ceremony, General Xinyu. Since Brother Zhangqiu thinks that I'm qualified for the position of Southern Protector General, this matter shouldn't be a problem. Wang Jin nodded in response, paying no heed to Zhangqiu Jinxiong's words. He wasn't interested in military affairs, and this wasn't his field of expertise either. As for Xinyu Zhongtong, he didn't pay too much attention to him either. The previous Protector General had the right to recommend the successor. The current war god, the Crown Prince's imperial tutor, Wang Zhongxi, had recommended Ge Han, and Fomin Linta had recommended Gao Xianji. Clearly, Zhangqiu Jinxiong had this right as well. There's also this Wang Gongzi, Wang Chong. Don't underestimate him just because he's young, but he's a well-known figure in the capital. At such a young age, he has already met the emperor. There aren't many in the younger generation who can match up to him. Besides, there's probably no one in the world who doesn't know of this Wang Gongzi. In order to become the Southern Protector General in the future, you'll have to get closer to this Wang Gongzi. Unexpectedly, after introducing Wang Zhen, Zhangqiu Jinxiong went on to introduce Wang Chong, who was standing beside him. Lord, you're flattering me. Wang Chong is still studying in the Kunwa training camp, and he doesn't have any official position on him yet. I'm not worthy of your praise. Wang Chong hurriedly replied, regardless of whether it was Zhangqiu Jinxiong or Xinyu Zhongtong. One was the future Minister of War, while the other was the future Southern Protector General. Both of them were influential officials in the military. Wang Chong didn't have any official position on him yet, so how could he dare to accept such a bow? Wang Gongzi, you're too kind. On the other hand, Xinyu Zhongtong didn't think too much about it. Upon hearing Zhangqiu Jinxiong's words, he turned around and bowed respectfully to Wang Chong, causing Wang Chong to feel a little embarrassed. Lord Xinyu is too polite. Wang Chong quickly stood up and returned the greeting. Zhongtong, Wang Gongzi is an influential figure in the capital. You're not familiar with the bureaucracy, and this is your first time coming into contact with it. If you have any problems in the future, you'll have to consult this young Master Wang. Zhangqiu Jinxiong pointed a finger at Wang Chong said. Ha, Brother Xinyu, Lord Zhangqiu is right. Young Master Wang is someone who can even persuade the King of Song. It's definitely not a bad idea to get closer to him. Yang Zhao also chimed in from the side. He and Wang Chong were sworn brothers, although this relationship couldn't be revealed to the public. Nevertheless, Zhangqiu Jinxiong was still aware of it. Seeing how highly Zhangqiu Jinxiong regarded this sworn brother of his, Yang Zhao felt that it was a matter of face. Speaking of which, this was also a huge credit to him. Wang Gongzi, I'll be counting on you in the future. Xinyu Zhongtong glanced at Wang Chong and said. Xinyu Zhongtong was a pure martial artist. This was his first time entering the capital, as well as his first time coming into contact with the influential officials of the capital. Even though he had a slow and reserved personality, Xinyu Zhongtong wasn't a fool. The young man on the other side came from a family of ministers and generals. Just this background alone was enough to surpass many others, and it wouldn't be a problem for him to be conferred a noble title in the future. Not to mention, this young man was a rare genius. Xinyu Zhongtong knew that the reason why the Protector General was able to enter the capital was due to this low-profile young man. Ha, We're all brothers. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Yang Zhao laughed heartily. Come, come, come. Let's drink. Cheers. Another round of toasting and mingling. The atmosphere was joyous and harmonious. Lord Zhangqiu, the defenses of the Southern Protectorate Manor are currently weak. If Uzun were to make use of this opportunity to invade the east, what would we do? Will the Southern Protectorate Manor be able to withstand him? All of a sudden, a discordant voice sounded. In an instant, the entire tavern fell silent. However, when they saw the ignorant person speaking, Yang Zhao, Wang Zhen, and Xinyu Zhongtong were stunned. Wang Gongzi. Zhangqiu Jinxiong looked at Wang Chong with a slight frown. He didn't expect it to be Wang Chong. Chonga, what are you doing? Lord Zhangqiu is the Southern Protector General. Haven't you considered this matter? Do I need you to tell me? Wang Zhen reprimanded sternly. Wang Chong's words were extremely offensive. To put it mildly, he was disrespecting Zhangqiu Jinxiong. But to put it mildly, he was cursing Zhangqiu Jinxiong. Zhangqiu Jinxiong was brimming with ambition for this trip to the capital. Wang Chong's words were taboo, cursing Zhangqiu Jinxiong's misfortune. Wang Chong stared unblinkingly at Zhangqiu Jinxiong with a fiery gaze. He knew that his big uncle was reminding him that he had gone overboard with his words. But Wang Chong had no intention of backing down. It was impossible for him to stop Zhangqiu Jinxiong now. He had already made up his mind to enter the Bureau of Military Personnel, and anyone who dared to stop him would be his enemy. Xinyu Zhongtong's position as the future Southern Protector General was already set in stone. Zhangqiu Jinxiong had thought deeply before deciding on this candidate, so there was no way he would allow anyone to change his mind. All possibilities were sealed. Wang Chong could only try to use his own methods to change his fate. This kind of method might offend some people and make some people feel unhappy, but Wang Chong had no choice but to do it. Fate had already delivered an opportunity to him. Zhangqiu Jinxiong, Xinyu Zhongtong, Yang Zhao, and all of the generals of Jiannan. Chapter 273. Hee, it's fine. Waving his hands, Zhangqiu Jinxiong suddenly burst into laughter and stopped Wang Zhen. So Wang Gongzi is interested in military affairs as well. But then again, how could the younger brother of a general not be interested? It'll only benefit him in the future. As expected of a protector general, Zhangqiu Jinxiong managed to resolve the awkwardness with a wave of his hand. Hee, that's right, that's right. I've interacted with Wang Gongzi a few times, and he is indeed interested in military affairs. It's rare for me to meet Lord Zhangqiu here, so I knew that he wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. Ha ha ha. Yang Zhao reacted swiftly and tried to mediate the situation. Upon hearing Zhangqiu Jinxiong's words and Yang Zhao's agreement, the atmosphere in the banquet eased up once more. The generals of the Annan Protectorate who had been rather dissatisfied with Wang Chong nodded, accepting this explanation. Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, and his elder brother, Wang Fu, were both commanders in the military, so it was only natural for them to be interested in military affairs. As one of the few protector generals of the empire, it was only natural for Lord Zhangqiu to seek his guidance. Hee, Wang Gongzi has lived in the capital for a long time, so it's normal for you to be unfamiliar with military affairs. Uzun is located on a plateau, and the journey south to Jiannan is long and treacherous, so it won't be easy. Furthermore, Uzun has never been to the mainland before, so they aren't familiar with the terrain. Unless someone guides them, it's impossible for them to gain anything. However, the Uzun people have a red face, which is completely different from us Tang people. Any spy would be able to tell with a glance. Furthermore, the Uzun people who enter Jiannan are under strict surveillance. Other than the Tea-Horse Road, the other cities on the mainland are strictly forbidden from entering. Besides, Uzun is a sparsely populated place, so it's difficult for news to spread. To put it bluntly, only you and I know that we have entered the capital, but the Uzun people might not know about it. Zhangqiu Jinxiong stretched out a finger and wagged it at Wang Chong with a smile. Roar! The commanders around him burst into laughter. As the elite generals of Annan, they knew the Uzun people better than anyone else. Wang Chong didn't say anything. His brows furrowed even more, and the worry in his heart deepened. Of course, we are not hoping for the enemy to make a mistake. I have managed the Annan Protectorate Manor for more than 10 years, and it has long since become an impregnable fortress. Moreover, all the rules and regulations have been fully restored. Even if I am not there, it can still operate normally. Moreover, there are still the 180,000 elite soldiers that I have painstakingly trained. Even if the people of Uzan come south, what is there to be afraid of? Zhangqiu Jinxiong harumphed coldly. His eyes were filled with disdain, and his expression was one of unparalleled arrogance. As the Southern Protector General, one of the few top-notch commanders of the empire, it was impossible for him to reach this position without some ability. Southern border had not been at war for more than 10 years. It was not because of geography, and even more not because of luck. It was strength. There were no weak soldiers under a strong general, and he, Zhangqiu Jinxiong, had no weak soldiers under him. The 180,000 elite soldiers were the greatest guarantee of the empire's southern border. To think that even Zhangqiu Jinxiong would be the same. Hearing Zhangqiu Jinxiong's words, Wang Chong felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. There was no doubt that Zhangqiu Jinxiong was a qualified commander. Jiannan wasn't as peaceful as it had been all along. The peace that he had enjoyed over the past decade wasn't a coincidence, but the result of Zhangqiu Jinxiong's meticulous training. With a complete system, a large army and countless experienced commanders, Zhangqiu Jinxiong was no ordinary commander. He was definitely qualified to be a commander. But not even Zhangqiu Jinxiong could have imagined that the calamity of the southwest and the northwest would start from the Annan Protectorate Manor that he had suppressed. All 180,000 elites would perish in battle. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's Annan Protectorate Manor would become the first protectorate in the history of the empire to be disbanded due to a crushing defeat. Life comes from hardship, and death comes from ease. Even the Annan Protector General, Zhangqiu Jinxiong, harbored such a careless mentality, let alone Xin Yuzhongtong, who had been influenced by him. I was intending to keep Zhangqiu Jinxiong in Jiannan, but from the looks of it now, even if he were to remain there, it would still be unavoidable. Wang Chong's heart was agitated, and an indescribable sorrow welled up in him. When Zhangqiu Jinxiong said these words, there was a hint of pride in his voice. Wang Chong could sense that Zhangqiu Jinxiong was extremely confident in his plans in Annan, but it was precisely because of this that Wang Chong felt an inexplicable sense of sorrow. That tragedy in the southwest. Wang Chong had always thought that it was just a coincidence that could be easily changed. But it was only now that Wang Chong realized something. Regardless of whether it was Zhangqiu Jinxiong or Xin Yuzhongtong, no matter who was in power, this tragedy was unavoidable. The Tang dynasty had been peaceful for too long, and their arrogance had not only seeped into the royal court, but also into the military. Lord, have you ever thought about what would happen if Uzan and Mengshi Zhao were to work together? Wang Chong suddenly asked. As soon as those words were spoken, the proud and smiling Zhangqiu Jinxiong's face abruptly warped. The entire room fell silent, to the point that one could hear a pin drop. The generals of Annan glared at Wang Chong with rage in their eyes. Wang Chong's words might have been a joke to him, but to the generals of Annan, there were countless comrades, and even their families and children there. It was the place where they belonged for the rest of their lives. Wang Chong's joke wasn't funny at all. Isn't Wang Gongzi going a little overboard? The middle-aged scholar beside Zhangqiu Jinxiong stroked his mustache and said, Hee Wang Gongzi, it's fine if you don't go overboard. Let's eat. Let's eat. Yang Zhao hurriedly tried to mediate the situation. He was perplexed. This sworn brother of his had always been a playboy with an outstanding disposition, but for some reason, he felt as though he had turned into a completely different person, asking about such sensitive matters. He was intending to matchmake Zhangqiu Jinxiong with the Wang clan, a clan of ministers and generals in the capital. However, if this were to continue, the banquet might not be able to proceed any further, and everyone ended up parting on bad terms. Mengshi Zhao has just swept through Irai and conquered the other 5 Zhao kingdoms. King Zheluofeng is in high spirits, and is at the peak of his ambitions. I heard that the Great Tang's decree Mengshi Zhao is about to launch an attack. On the other hand, Uzun is currently building up his army, training a large number of cavalrymen, and purchasing steel. He has already amassed a force of 300,000 cavalrymen. Building up his army and expanding his army? If he doesn't have any ulterior motives, why would he do so? Annan is situated in the crevice between Uzun and Mengshi, and both sides are countries of tigers and wolves. If the two sides were to ally with one another, have you thought about what will happen to Annan? Wang Chong stared at the other party and asked. Even before the renowned protector general of Annan, Wang Chong didn't back down in the slightest. Annan's affairs concerned the lives of 180,000 elites and countless civilians. Even if he were to risk incurring Zhangqiu Jinxiong's wrath, there were some things that he had to say and do. In the current Annan protectorate manner, from the protector general Zhangqiu Jinxiong to the ordinary soldiers, no one had the slightest awareness of danger. At this moment, there had to be a person, a voice, to warn them. Otherwise, if tragedy were to befall them, it would be too late. Wang Chong was glad that he had met Yang Zhao on the streets outside the Blue Bottle Pavilion. It was also because of Yang Zhao that he had obtained this opportunity. The reason why he had rushed to this banquet instead of cultivating on the spirit vein wasn't to curry favor with Protector General Zhangqiu Jinxiong, nor was it to rope in the generals of Annan. Rather, it was for this opportunity, an opportunity to speak before the generals of Annan. Even if he were to incur Zhangqiu Jinxiong's hatred, it didn't matter to him. Chong'er, Wang Jin glanced at his nephew, and a hint of worry flashed across his eyes. Before this banquet, he did warn Wang Chong not to get too close to them, lest he brought trouble upon himself. But now, Wang Chong was standing on the opposite side of Zhangqiu Jinxiong. Wang Jin wasn't worried about Zhangqiu Jinxiong. After all, he had come from a clan of generals and ministers for several generations. Even if Zhangqiu Jinxiong had some grudges against him, he wouldn't be able to do anything to the Wang clan. What Wang Jin was worried about was Wang Chong. He could sense that there was something amiss with Wang Chong at the moment. Brat, what nonsense are you spouting? Is this how you speak to an adult? Don't think that you're Duke Jiu's descendant. Don't go overboard. That at the banquet, the generals of the Annan Protectorate Manor couldn't hold themselves back any longer. Their faces darkened, and they looked incredibly awful. It should have been a joyous occasion for the Protector General to invite them to a banquet out of goodwill. Yet, this young master of the Wang clan didn't know what was good for him. It was one thing for him to say that Uzun would launch an attack at any time, but now, he was saying that Uzun and Mengshi Zhao would work together to attack the Annan Protectorate Manor. This was too much. Were they thinking that the Annan Protectorate Manor was too peaceful? Lord Wang, we respect you as an influential official of the royal court, but what do you mean by this? Are you trying to humiliate Lord Wang? Wang Chong was too young, and it wasn't appropriate for them to get angry with him. Thus, many of them vented their frustrations on Wang General. Those who didn't know what was going on might even think that it was Wang Jin's doing. Shut your mouths. At that moment, Zhangqiu Jinxiong's expression turned cold. He raised a few fingers and shouted at his subordinates to stop. As the Annan Protector General, he couldn't possibly be so magnanimous. Contrary to everyone's expectations, not only did Zhangqiu Jinxiong not get angry, he even had a contemplative look on his face. Initially, Zhangqiu Jinxiong thought that the lad before him was intentionally making a fuss. But when he heard the latter half of Wang Chong's words, he didn't get angry at all. Because what Wang Chong said was the truth. His spies had just received intelligence that the 7th emperor of the Uzun Empire was currently training his troops by the Qinghai Lake, recruiting the herdsmen and training the cavalry. On the other hand, Mengshi Zhao's Jelifeng was indeed growing more and more arrogant and disrespectful toward the Tang dynasty. This was something he could sense more clearly than anyone else. Mengshi Zhao was a vassal state of the Tang dynasty. In the past, Jelifeng still had some respect for him. But now, there were many orders that even he couldn't carry out anymore. He was only pretending to obey them. The latest news he received was that Jelifeng had just dismissed the prime minister and other officials who were close to the Tang dynasty and Mengshi Zhao, and he had recently promoted a few youths and warmongers from Mengshi Zhao. This wasn't good news for the Annan Protectorate manor. It was clear that Mengshi Zhao and the Uzun Empire were disloyal to the Tang dynasty. However, it just so happened that Zhangqiu Jinxiong wanted to enter the Bureau of Military Personnel, and he wanted to leave this matter to his successor. Yet, he didn't expect a 15-year-old lad from the Wang clan to expose this matter before him. Has the Wang clan's intelligence network reached such a level? In that instant, Zhangqiu Jinxiong shot a deep glance at Wang Chong as countless thoughts flashed across his mind. A moment later, Zhangqiu Jinxiong's gaze fell on Wang Zhen, who was standing beside Wang Chong. In his heart, Zhangqiu Jinxiong still found it hard to believe that the words he had just spoken were the idea of a young lad like Wang Chong. In the depths of his heart, Zhangqiu Jinxiong was more willing to believe that it was Wang Zhen's idea. Wang Zhen's silence further confirmed his conjecture. Wang Zhen is an influential official of the royal court, and he has the right to enter the royal palace to meet with the emperor. For him to say those words through the mouth of his nephew, it can't be without reason. Could it be that this is the will of the holy emperor? Zhangqiu Jinxiong thought. What he didn't know was that he had guessed wrongly. All of this was Wang Chong's own idea. Wang Zhen's trust in this nephew of his had reached a level that made one's hair stand on end. It wasn't just him. The king of Song was the same as well. Thus, even though he didn't know why Wang Chong would do such a thing, once Wang Chong did something, neither Wang Zhen nor the king of Song would stop him, because they knew that this child would never do something without a motive. Chapter 274. Thinking that Wang Chong's words came from Wang Zhen, Zhangqiu Jinxiong dared not let his guard down. Chong Gongzi is astute and eager to learn. Coming from a clan of ministers and generals, it's a good thing for you to have such thoughts. Don't think too much into it. Zhangqiu Jinxiong waved his hand, first stopping his subordinates, and then he turned to Wang Chong with a faint smile, his expression brimming with vigor. Mengshi Zhao and Uzun aren't the first geniuses to appear in the empire. But does Chong Gongzi know that the situation you speak of has never happened before? Mengshi Zhao and Uzun are from the Arai and the Highlands respectively. They are of different languages, races, and even their skin colors are different. Furthermore, our Central Plains Tang dynasty is like a sharp knife that separates them. From the start to the end, the two countries have never had the chance to interact with one another, needless to say, ally with one another. The hearts of men are filled with suspicion. Even two hands are unable to coordinate with one another, needless to say two empires. Furthermore, with such a massive army, who will command whom? Who will be the leader? And who will be the subordinate? Chong Gongzi has never been on the battlefield, so it's understandable that you aren't aware of the affairs of the military. Zhangqiu Jinxiong tapped his index finger lightly on the table. As the Southern Protector General, he couldn't be any more familiar with Uzun and Mengshi Zhao. If Uzun and Mengshi Zhao intend to attack the Central Plains together, they must mobilize at least 200,000 soldiers each. How are they going to command an army of 400,000? What's the timing? How are they going to mobilize and coordinate their movements? Chong Gongzi, you're still young, so don't underestimate these matters. An army of several 100,000 isn't just a few hundred or a few thousand. How can they be mobilized so easily? Besides, even if they were to ally with one another, with 100,000 elites and a city at their back, wouldn't they be able to fend off their attack? As long as they can stall for some time and wait for the army of the royal court to arrive, no matter how many soldiers they have, they will still be reduced to ashes. Putting everything else aside, the army closest to Jiannan is the Big Dipper army of Longxi. This was an army established by great General Wang Zhongxi. Even though Geshu Han was the new commander-in-chief, the Big Dipper army was made up of Han men. The Big Dipper army has accumulated plenty of experience in dealing with Uzun's cavalry. If such a situation were to occur, the Big Dipper army would surely be mobilized. In addition, he could also mobilize troops from the other borders. Since the founding of the Tang dynasty, there has never been a situation like what you described. War was not a child's play. No matter how ambitious Jelifeng was, no matter how young he was, he still had to think things through. Once you offend the Tang dynasty, You have to consider the consequences of the Tang dynasty's wrath. That's not something that a Rai Mengshi Zhao can bear. At the end of his words, Zhangqiu Jinxiong harumphed coldly. Mengshi Zhao was different from Uzun. Mengshi Zhao was a vassal state of the Tang dynasty. Vassal states were those that were influenced by Confucianism and could be occupied, but were not. If Mengshi Zhao dared to go against him, he would have to consider the consequences. Lord, Wang Chong doesn't know whether Mengshi Zhao will be able to form an alliance with Uzun. But it is a fact that Mengshi Zhao has sent an envoy to contact the 7th Uzun. Wang Chong sat upright, and his words shocked everyone present. Zhangqiu Jinxiong, Xianyu Zhongtong, and the other generals of Jiannan were shocked. Chong Gongzi, what do you mean by that? You said that Mengshi Zhao contacted Uzun to form an alliance. Is that true? Zhangqiu Jinxiong asked grimly. Initially, he thought that Wang Chong was just seeking advice from him. After all, as the scion of a general, it was normal for him to do so. However, Wang Chong's words had already exceeded the scope of seeking advice. It was already within the scope of military affairs. If Mengshi Zhao were to ask Uzun for an alliance, it would not be a small matter. The southwest was under his jurisdiction, at least until he entered the Ministry of War. If something went wrong, everyone present would be implicated. Not long ago, I got to know a noble young master from Mirai. His father was a high-ranking official in Mengshi Zhao. According to him, Jelifeng had already sent a trusted minister as an envoy to Uzun to express his intention of forming an alliance. That young master has a good impression of our Tang dynasty and doesn't want to start a war with our Tang dynasty. Plus, I treated him with great hospitality. That's why he said this unintentionally when he was drunk. However, he sobered up after getting drunk. Realizing that he had made a slip of the tongue, he hurriedly returned to Arai the next day. He didn't even bid farewell. The general was the Annan Protector General, which was why Wang Chong had said such a thing. I don't mean to offend you, Wang Chong said. Those words abruptly caused the atmosphere in the banquet to turn heavy. The generals in the pavilion glanced at one another with grim expressions on their faces. Even Yang Zhao's expression froze as he realized the severity of the situation. Chong Gongzi, pardon me for asking too much, but what is the surname of that noble from Mirai? Zhangqiu Jinxiong asked gravely. Chen, Wang Chong said. Seeing that he had attracted the attention of all the generals of the southwest, Wang Chong inwardly said, I apologize. The matter at Nanzhao was no small matter. It concerned the lives of 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty and dozens of cities in the southwest, as well as the lives of nearly 1 million civilians. In order to be wary of the generals from Jiannan and make preparations for the future, he could only resort to such underhanded means. Chun. Zhangqiu Jinxiong lowered his head in contemplation. He couldn't be any more familiar with the upper echelons of Mengshi Zhao. Thinking back, there was indeed an official surname Chun by Jelifeng's side. Furthermore, this person had accompanied Jelifeng on a diplomatic mission to the Tang dynasty in the past. Could the words of Duke Jiu's grandson be true? Was Jelifeng plotting a rebellion, intending to ally with Uzun to deal with the Tang dynasty? Jelifeng is an ambitious person who doesn't care about the consequences. What he wants is only his own ambition. Also, Lord Protector General has also said that, in a one-on-one fight, Mengshi Zhao is definitely no match for the Tang dynasty. Thus, if he wishes to succeed, he has to contact Uzun. Irai and Mengshi Zhao are far apart, separated by the Tang dynasty. Regardless of what request Uzun has for Mengshi Zhao, even if it means bowing down to him, Jelifeng will surely agree to it. After all, this is all in name only. Even if Uzun wants to do something, he can't bypass the Tang dynasty and ask for Mengshi Zhao's help. This plan of driving the tiger to swallow the wolf was definitely in line with Mengshi Zhao's interests. At the very least, Jelifeng can completely break free from the Tang dynasty's control. Seeing that his words were effective, Wang Chong immediately struck while the iron was hot and inculcated his words. As for Uzun, the conflicts between him and the Tang dynasty are increasing day by day, and he has also fought against the Tang dynasty several times against the Tang dynasty. Even if he can't get anything out of the alliance with Mengshi Zhao, As long as he can suppress the Tang dynasty, it will be beneficial to him. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. If Mengshi Zhao requests an alliance, as long as he can confirm the sincerity and authenticity of Mengshi Zhao's alliance, there's an extremely high chance that Uzun will agree to Mengshi Zhao's request. Zhangqiu Jinxiong stared at the youthful face of this youth, a look of shock in his eyes. Even Xinyu Zhongtong could sense that there was something unusual about this earnest youth, and a solemn look appeared in his eyes. At the very least, none of the surrounding generals of the southwest dared to think that he was spouting nonsense. For the first time, everyone sensed the extraordinary weight of this youth. Although this youth from the Wang clan was young, he was able to hit the nail on the head with regards to the relationship between Uzun and Mengshi Zhao. Before this, they had all believed that this youth was spouting nonsense, a curse, a deliberate insult to the Protector General. But at this very moment, they couldn't help but think that Wang Chong's words made sense. Even though Mengshi Zhao and Uzun had never worked together before, it wasn't impossible for them to work together. Just as Wang Chong said, Mengshi Zhao could make use of Uzun to break free from the control of the Tang dynasty and become an independent kingdom. On the other hand, Uzun could make use of Mengshi Zhao to deal a blow to the Tang dynasty and wash away the humiliation of being defeated in the hands of the Tang dynasty. Putting aside anything else, just to deal a blow to the Tang dynasty, Uzun would be willing to form an alliance with Wang Chong. More importantly, everyone thought that the Uzun Empire wouldn't descend into the east easily. After all, the Uzun Empire had never touched Jiannan, let alone ventured deep into the mainland. As such, they knew nothing about Jiannan. If they were to wage war on a land that they knew nothing about, the strength of the Uzun Empire would surely be greatly reduced. While Uzun Empire wasn't familiar with the mainland, Mengshi Zhao was. Every year, countless merchants would enter Jiannan from Mirai. Even the civil and military officials would frequent Jiannan. With Mengshi Zhao leading the way and acting as an insider, the final weakness of Uzun Empire disappeared. Even Zhangqiu Jinxiong had to admit that the words of the Wang clan's Qilin son weren't impossible, but highly probable. For a moment, his heart couldn't help but sink. Slowly raising his head, he glanced at the young man before him, and the feeling in his heart suddenly changed. Before coming to the capital, Zhangqiu Jinxiong had heard of this young man's reputation. In the regional commander's incident, this young man was undoubtedly the center of attention, and he had stirred up the hearts of many generals in the military. However, hearing about it was one thing, and experiencing it for himself was another. Even though he had helped Wang Chong in the regional commander's incident, his impression back then was that the young man was fearless, and the conflict between the Hu and Han was indeed in line with his interests. However, the current situation was completely different. The southwest was his territory, and regardless of whether it was Mengshi Zhao of Arai or Uzun of the West, Zhangqiu Jinxiong knew them like the back of his hand. Yet this young man was able to dominate his territory, and yet he was still able to hit the nail on the head. For the first time, Zhangqiu Jinxiong felt that he had underestimated the young man. The reason why he was able to host this banquet at the Ten Sun Tavern was due to Wang Chong's help. But more than that, it was because Wang Chong was Duke Jiu's grandson and nephew. It was because of the prestigious identity behind him. But all of a sudden, Zhangqiu Jinxiong realized that he was wrong. Even if the young man before him was stripped of his prestigious background and his identity as Wang Zhen's nephew, his talent was still dazzling. It can't be a coincidence that this young man is able to attract the attention of so many people. Unknowingly, everyone in the Annan West Protector General's attitude toward Wang Chong had undergone a subtle change, becoming one that was filled with respect. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.